that our live is disrupted. Is it back? We may proceed. Okay. Okay. Honorable Member for Island Harbor, in respect of the figure that you presented, what was the statement that you made that was objectionable? Is it that you said there was a specific figure? I can't recall now.
Madam Speaker, I think that comparing the $10 million in support that this relief package of the capping, the fuel surcharge, of the removing freight and insurance from the customs duties, and the other area that the government has proposed 10 million in support, comparing it to what the House would cost in the UK, it is a lesser figure. And my statement was, where is the priority? What is the priority, and who is being put first?
On a point of order, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the statement is a total misrepresentation of the facts. The reality is that the statement I said, for the period of 3 months, this measure will cost $10 million for 3 months. 3 months, as opposed to the purchase of a building that would cost at one figure spread over the entire lifetime of the building, or as long as the government of Anguilla wishes to house it. So to represent a one-time purchase with a measure for 3 months, and we have no idea what's going to happen after the 3 months because of the volatile situation that currently exists. And so I do not think that the member ought to be standing up and making misrepresentations in this honorable House for the sake of trying to seek political points. Thank you, ma'am.
I was just experimenting with my handy AI on our Hansard to ask the AI when those questions were led. Those questions took place in the meeting of the 10th of February 2026. And all I asked is, when was the meeting that the London questions were posed? I think that maybe we can go back to those. And what's objectionable is representing that there's a specific figure. And what I understand is that there's no specific figure. And I think that we can agree that there's no specific figure. Whatever is dealt with in the public domain is another matter that you can deal with in the public domain. But as I recall, on the 10th of February 2026, those questions that were answered on record indicated that there was no hard and fast figure as yet. So I will invite you to withdraw and not misrepresent that there is a figure, and you can proceed with your submission, honorable member.
Respectfully, Madam Speaker, I did not say that this figure was set in the House, and I am not presenting a figure set in the House. I am stating a figure that the honorable member presented to the public. And Madam Speaker, this has been out there in the public domain for over 2 months, and there has been no withdrawal or contesting this number by the member.
So then I'm gonna, if it's something that's not on the record, honorable members, both sides, we're gonna, if it's not on the record on the Hansard that I have, honorable member for Road South, I am gonna stand down to allow you to find where it was said so that you can confirm. So we'll stand down for 5 minutes and you can confirm where it was said by the honorable premier. While we were on break, I'll ask Ms. Proctor just to share with me the record that I consulted before we proceed with whether or not the honorable member was able to get the information. So in terms of the transcript, what was objected, I wanted to get the precise statement so that the point of order could be ruled on accurately. And it says in the transcript at 2:54, the Honorable Dr. Webster stated the 21 Fleet Street is about 16 million EC dollars, and the maintenance cost, Madam Speaker, will exceed that over time. And that's when the point of order was raised. So it helps to put context that the point of order wasn't the fact that it was used as an open figure, it was that it was stated as a statement of fact, and that's what was found objectionable. So were you able, Honorable Dr. Webster, to obtain any information to confirm that as a statement of fact, the 21 Fleet Street is about 16 million?
And thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me the time to confer. Madam Speaker, I don't have a number that is to the .00. However, I do know that Anguilla Focus, Madam Speaker, may I? Anguilla Focus, which is a reputable online source, Madam Speaker, did state on the 27th of January, the government has set aside US $5 to $6 million to purchase property in London to house Anguilla's first permanent office in the United Kingdom. And Madam Speaker, the Anguilla United Front's Government of Anguilla page, which I assume is sanctioned by the Government of Anguilla, it states in one paragraph, Anguilla UK office, Anguilla House. Government is pursuing the establishment of a permanent Anguilla presence in London, not a residence, but an office hub. Funding of approximately US $5 to $6 million US has been allocated from budget underspend. It went on to say there, Madam Speaker, no property has yet been finalized. However, the Honorable Premier and Minister of Finance has, in press conferences and also on the radio on Rockin' the Rock with Steve Seligman, stated that the 21 Fleet Street is the property that is being looked at, is owned by a barrister, and that's the property that is now going to be considered with a non-binding deposit. Madam Speaker, the Premier at that time stated that she does not know what the hullabaloo is about. Madam Speaker, the hullabaloo is...
Honorable Dr. Webster, we're only still dealing with the point of order. So I haven't ruled on it as yet. So that is in respect of, you presented the Anguilla Focus, and you've indicated that there was an allocation, right? And then you've indicated that there were certain comments on radio stations, on various radio stations. But an allocation is very different from a statement of fact where you say, what is the point of order is this? And I think we might be able to agree on it. You've stated the 21 fleet is about 16 million, and that's what's objected to. And it's objected to, as I understand, on the point of order because there is no conclusive contract or purchase, which has already been ventilated in this House. So the objection is that the honorable member for Sandy Hill has asked that you withdraw it as a statement of fact. Perhaps you can rephrase it in another way, but it cannot be misrepresented to the public as a statement of fact wherein you say the 21 Fleet Street is about 16 million. Honorable member for Sandy Hill, did I capture your point of order accurately?
That is absolutely correct, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
I think we can move past it. I think you can phrase it in another way, but you have to be conscious of the public taking it away as a statement of fact from your role as the honorable leader of opposition. I understand the point you're trying to make. I understand, but you cannot make it you cannot represent it as a statement of fact when it isn't. Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'll withdraw the exact figure. Although we do know that if an allocation of 5 to 6 million US dollars, if you calculate that 2.6882 is a $1 US to EC, that's roughly a number that you'd get. But I move on, Madam Speaker.
Yes,
I
because one
withdraw
day
the
you might
accept
argue
that.
that they bought it for more. It's just an allocation. It is,
Yes.
okay? I
Thank
think
you,
we can
Madam
agree. You
Speaker.
may proceed.
I just want the public to not think that there wasn't an allocation, because in December of 2025, Executive Council minutes show that there was money that was put in escrow for the purchase of this house, Madam Speaker. The exact amount has not been stated, Madam Speaker, as expected and for commercial purposes, and I have no problem with that. But, Madam Speaker, the point is that I'm just trying to say that greater priority is given to procuring a house in London than for the amount that is given for relief immediately for the people of Anguilla. And what is the hullabaloo? The hullabaloo is that the people of Anguilla deserve the relief, Madam Speaker, not that we need at this point in time to procure a house in London or anywhere else, Madam Speaker. Charity begins at home, and that's what we should be working on. And that's the point I'm trying to make, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I also want to make one more point. The Minister of Finance, the Honorable Premier, mentioned, the member for Sandy Hill stated that the import duties are moderately above expected. Madam Speaker, I'd like to propose that import duties is a reflection of the economy, Madam Speaker, because the more the economy is doing well, then there are more imports, given that Anguilla is an import-dependent country. And, Madam Speaker, the negative economy is affected by the policy decisions of this AUF administration to pause, to reassess, to reprioritize, and to go in reverse. Madam Speaker, I stand here today. I support the bill as it is, but I ask that more be done so that the relief can be passed on to the people of Anguilla, so that the cost of living can be mitigated, the increases. The cost of electricity can be mitigated. The cost of fuel, Madam Speaker, can be decreased, because we know that the fishermen of Anguilla, that it costs them more to try to feed us, Madam Speaker. That is something that they need to be dealt with directly by this administration. The businesses in Anguilla, they need to be looked at in a different light, Madam Speaker, so that the cost can be controlled, Madam Speaker. And so I'm just asking that even though these are good measures, that they have not gone far enough. And if our reserves are as they're supposed to be, and our economy is as it's stated that it is, even though by all intents and purposes we know that it is in decline, Madam Speaker, this administration can do more for the people of Anguilla. I want to thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honorable Member for Valley North, and then I'll proceed to the Single Island-wide Electoral District Member Vanderpool thereafter.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I really honestly intended to be on my best behavior today, Madam Speaker. But Madam Speaker, the hypocrisy in this room, Madam Speaker, is all too real. I wish to also welcome back the Honorable Leader of the Opposition. It has been quite a while since we've seen him. I don't think I've seen him for the year, Madam Speaker. So it's very good to have him back. Madam Speaker.
Is there a point of order to your welcome?
Yes, it is, Madam Speaker.
Okay.
That's
What is the point of order?
Madam Speaker, the member is given an absolute falsehood unless the member was not here on January 10th when I was in this honorable house, Madam Speaker.
The point of order is that the member does not wish for you to represent that he has not been here for the year. He indicates that he has been here on January 10th.
Well, Madam Speaker, I said I haven't seen him in the house for the year, Madam Speaker. I wasn't here on January 10th. January 9th was my birthday. So, Madam Speaker, I would have missed that one day, and that was the one day that he was here. My sincerest apologies, Madam Speaker. And to the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, he was here for one session for the year, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wish to put on record my sincerest gratitude to the Honorable Premier and the Minister for Economic Development, Mr. Kyle Hodge, for their excellent work, Madam Speaker, in pushing this particular bill forward, but all the work that they've done in relation to the relief And I'd also like to thank the Honorable Mr. Jose Vanterpool for the work he did in the last few days as the acting premier in helping us to finalize this legislation that we have here today, Madam Speaker, as well as the dedicated public servants in the Ministry of Finance, the AG's chambers, and even the Deputy Governor's Office and Governor's Office, Madam Speaker, because on Good Friday we were meeting for Executive Council to be able to make this a priority, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, the work that we are doing and the bill that is being brought here today has not been done in a vacuum. The government of Anguilla's response to the global uncertainty took a number of different steps before we got here to this point, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, over the past few months, we've been tracking all the changes and development in the global space. The war, the price of oil, tariff changes that started even from last year, Madam Speaker. And it was important for us to determine the most beneficial policy direction to respond to this global crisis. We also then, Madam Speaker, took an assessment of the government of Anguilla's financial position and situation and its ability to absorb the inflationary pressures that exist. Madam Speaker, after doing all of that, we settled on 3 main areas to respond to that we felt as an administration would have the most immediate impact: fuel, electricity, and freight. Madam Speaker, we took an approach not specific just to the average consumer, but also an approach that also supported the business community, Madam Speaker, because we all know how important the private sector is to our economy. Once we determined those 3 main key policy areas, Madam Speaker, we undertook the necessary legal procedures to make the support measures a reality. We took the relevant Executive Council decisions. We went through the legal drafting, Madam Speaker, and preparation for House of Assembly submissions. Madam Speaker, I want to put on record that our response has been grounded in data, responsible fiscal governance, and a proactive approach to the uncertain times ahead. Madam Speaker, we are not waiting until the freight costs globally increase. We are acting prior to that increase, Madam Speaker, because we recognize that a proactive approach is needed to respond to these global challenges. And Madam Speaker, I want to remind the general public, in addition to this bill, there are a number of other areas that we are addressing. I started with fuel, Madam Speaker, fuel at the pump. We have taken the decision to remove all duties on fuel importations at the port, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, because we recognize that it is important for us to go all the way. We also continuing, Madam Speaker, to enforce the cap on fuel wherever possible, Madam Speaker, because we recognize that the global cost of fuel continues to rise, it continues to be volatile, and we as a government need to do what we can and what we control to relieve those pressures from the people of Anguilla. Madam Speaker, earlier the Premier indicated that that is going to be a response that costs over $1 million, Madam Speaker, in relation to the fuel. Madam Speaker, we've also looked at addressing electricity, Madam Speaker. Because of the war involving Iran, fuel prices around the world have gone up. This is because the war is disrupting oil supply, which makes fuel more expensive for everyone globally. In Anguilla, this has caused the fuel surcharge to increase from 42 cents to 88 cents, Madam Speaker. The government of Anguilla did not wait for this increase to happen, Madam Speaker. We proactively operated. We ensured that we put something in place prior to the implementation of that, Madam Speaker. And so there will be no increase in fuel surcharge, Madam Speaker, because the government of Anguilla is going to be paying the difference What that means, Madam Speaker, is that the additional 46 cents in fuel surcharge will be paid by the government of Anguilla for the people. So the fuel surcharge on existing bills, Madam Speaker, will remain at 42% for residents and most businesses, except the accommodation sector, Madam Speaker. For the accommodation sector, Madam Speaker, we are capping the rate at 65%, which means that the government of Anguilla is paying that at 65 cents, which means the government of Anguilla is paying that additional 23 cents, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, this is important. This is important, Madam Speaker, because this recognizes that you can't just give relief, Madam Speaker, to individual citizens. Relief must be balanced. It must be well thought out. It must also include your business community, Madam Speaker, wherever possible. Because if you're providing relief to the average man on the street, the average consumer, but you're not providing relief to the business community, then, Madam Speaker, it means that that average man still has to pay higher costs, Madam Speaker, on goods and services. So wherever possible, it is important to offer a balanced approach. Because remember, Madam Speaker, this administration continues to be people-focused and people-centered, Madam Speaker. The business community are not our enemies. We don't regard the business community as criminals. We see the business community as an important part of Anguilla, an important part of the economy, Madam Speaker. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, government exists to serve the people of Anguilla and the private sector. We exist, Madam Speaker, to facilitate a strong and vibrant economy, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, this bill that is before us here today, Madam Speaker, does a couple of things. And I want the general public to understand exactly what this bill is going to do for the next 3 months. The government of Anguilla is making an important change to support families and businesses across the island, Madam Speaker. Again, this is not specific to just the average man importing, Madam Speaker. This is for business persons. This is for the average consumer who's ordering, Madam Speaker. Custom duties will no longer be charged on freight charges, only on the cost of the goods themselves. This means that whether you are an individual shopping online or a business owner, when you bring items into Anguilla, you will pay less on duties overall. For everyday citizens, this means real savings when shopping online. For example, if you buy an item that is $100 and you pay $25 for freight, in the past, you would have to pay duties on $125. Now, you will only be taxed on $100, Madam Speaker. With shipping costs going up around the world, this change helps to keep more money in the pocket of businesses and the average citizens. For businesses, this measure is designed to help keep the cost of doing business as low as possible. Because of the war in Iran, businesses are already paying more to buy goods overseas, and shipping costs are expected to continue rising. This is important because when costs go up for businesses, those costs are often always passed on to consumers. By removing duties on freight and insurance, the government is helping to reduce those added costs. When businesses are able to pay less to bring in their goods, it helps to reduce their expenses and avoid having to raise prices charged to customers. Whether you're purchasing items for yourself or your business, this measure is designed to ease the pressure on island during a time when costs are rising globally. Madam Speaker, we remain committed, Madam Speaker, to doing our part. And we are also asking families, Madam Speaker, and average citizens to also do their part. Wherever you can, whatever you can do, Madam Speaker, to save on electricity costs, to reduce your fuel consumption wherever possible, we're encouraging persons to also, and average citizens, to also do their part, Madam Speaker. We are all in this together. Madam Speaker, the electricity relief is over $6 million. The fuel relief, Madam Speaker, is over $1 million. The freight is over $2.5 million, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, that's over $10 million in the next 3 months only in relief. But Madam Speaker, that can't be looked at in a vacuum. Because remember, last year, Madam Speaker, the AUF administration delivered on one of its major campaign promises, and that was to deliver on GST relief, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we enacted GST-related policies, Madam Speaker, that reduced overall over a period of a year government's income by over $40 million, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, that money didn't go up into thin air. That money is back in the economy. That money is in people's pockets. That money is giving businesses flexibility and liquidity. So this 3 months of relief cannot be looked at, Madam Speaker, in isolation. Because last year, we didn't wait for a year, Madam Speaker. We didn't wait for people to continue crying out, Madam Speaker. We came in and we said this is a top priority for us. And by August 1st, we were able to deliver on that, Madam Speaker. Because we know that putting people first is critically important. So to say that we are not doing enough, Madam Speaker, is actually hypocritical, Madam Speaker. And it is hypocritical, Madam Speaker, because not too long ago, Madam Speaker, our people were in the streets protesting about the controversial GST tax, Madam Speaker. A tax that from its very inception was implemented not using a majority of elected officials, Madam Speaker, because as a matter of fact, 2 individuals on the government side at the time voted no against GST. So from the very beginning, Madam Speaker, GST began with issues. Nonetheless, Madam Speaker, GST was progressed. A year later, Madam Speaker, the business community, individual citizens took to the streets, Madam Speaker, protested to the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Madam Speaker, begging them to delay the implementation on GST, begging them, Madam Speaker, to sort out the situation with the goods on hand, Madam Speaker, that many had already paid on. And if government didn't come up with a solution, government itself would be imposing a temporary super-inflationary period, Madam Speaker. So when I hear the Leader of the Opposition in the House of Assembly talking about needing to do more, when under his administration, a super-inflationary period was imposed on the people of Anguilla, when we were barely out of COVID-19, things were not back up to speed yet. Businesses were just recovering, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, you see, this is important because people tend to forget. Because there's a reason why, Madam Speaker, there are 8 members on this side of the House today. Not by chance, Madam Speaker, but by choice. By choices of the people of Anguilla. And Madam Speaker, I want to talk a little bit about that temporary super-inflationary period, Madam Speaker. I want to take people back to that period. In around June, Madam Speaker, the business community wrote to the then APM administration, Madam Speaker, and asked.
Madam Speaker, on a point of order, on the relevance of what the member is speaking, the GST, are we debating the GST bill or are we debating the bill at hand?
Which part of the contribution is objectionable?
It seems as if we are debating the GST bill.
I think so. It's a very wide topic. You'll recall that your honorable leader was able to bring in information as it relates to a house. And it is wide because it touches and concerns taxes and the importance of this to the people of Anguilla. So I think the scope of debate is very wide in and of itself. I can assume it'll touch on many things. But you'll agree with me that your honorable leader spoke about the London House and the impact. We spent quite a while on that. So I'm not going to allow the point of order. You may proceed and complete your submission.
Madam Speaker, thank you so much for that, Madam Speaker. It's amazing that the honorable historian of the House, who's always giving irrelevant information, is coming with a point of order, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to continue, Madam Speaker, and take the public back to 2022, Madam Speaker. When the business community wrote to the honorable leader of the opposition and said to him at that time, the leader of government business at that time, Madam Speaker, that a temporary inflationary period would be put in place because they had already paid their 9% on the goods on hand, Madam Speaker. And government was asking them to put 13% on those goods, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I remember clear as day, the honorable leader of the opposition came out front. He took the letter, told persons good afternoon, and proceeded to go back into his office, Madam Speaker, and continued with the implementation of GST, Madam Speaker. Told the business community they had till the end of July to submit their stock on hand for consideration, Madam Speaker. They extended it down to August when businesses submitted their stock on hand information. Some of those businesses, Madam Speaker, didn't even get the respect to have acknowledgement of receipt of that stock on hand information, Madam Speaker. But you know what was also missing, Madam Speaker? No parameters for how refunds would be presented to those businesses. So businesses were expected to pass on savings without any mechanism in place to be able to ensure that they could get back what they would have passed on, Madam Speaker. August goes, nothing. September, nothing. October, nothing. Meanwhile, the super inflationary period is happening. November, nothing. Imagine my surprise on the 20-something of December, when we have already closed off and said all our Christmas greetings, we are asked to come back to the House, Madam Speaker, for consideration in relation to remittance of taxes to businesses who passed on the GST savings, Madam Speaker. Imagine businesses on the 23rd of December, one of the busiest periods of the year, being issued letters, Madam Speaker, being told how they should go about submissions to get back GST relief that they should have passed on to consumers, Madam Speaker. And you are telling me that that was an administration that cared about relief, Madam Speaker? Impossible, because that administration, Madam Speaker, they could have taken the hit, just like we're taking the hit now. They could have taken the hit. They could have taken the hit and say, we are implementing...
Madam Speaker, point of order. I've listened. My point is, the member is intentionally misleading this House and the people of Anguilla. Madam Speaker, the member said that there was no proposal of how the stock on hand would be catered for. There was a proposal, Madam Speaker, that they would be claimed back. It just wasn't specified as to specifically when. It was based on the bill, Madam Speaker, said that within 3 months. Now, it could have either been that you would get it where you would then get a claim back that you can deduct as you go along. In December of 2022, the decision was made that instead of carrying that into the new year, that the businesses would be paid out, Madam Speaker, so that we start the year new. And that was a decision made with the Ministry of Finance and the Attorney General's chambers, Madam Speaker. So the member is intentionally misleading the people, and she knows better.
Okay. Honorable Member, the point of order is in respect of the methodology. I believe you represented, Honorable Member, that there hadn't been any methodology in terms of how the stock would be dealt with, and the Honorable Member for Island Harbor is indicating that there was a methodology, but it didn't give a date. Is that what you said?
It didn't give the specific mechanism, but it had
there were provisions, but it wasn't specified in terms of the date.
Madam, not just the, Madam Speaker, with all due respect, I disagree. The member said that there were no details about the mechanism, and that in itself is the problem, Madam Speaker. There, in this bill, you were saying you allow for credits to be remitted back, but no specific details on the mechanism for doing such, how that would have been considered, the date by which that had to be submitted, how it would have been handled. That is the reality, and that is why they had to rush back to the House at the end of the year with that those details and that information was not given to the business community for almost 5 months.
Honorable Member for Island Harbour, the response, do you wish to comment on it? So it seems as if both are saying the same thing, but just that one was more complete. One represents that it was more complete and one represents that it wasn't as complete. Do you have any responses to the Honorable Member's characterization of that mechanism?
Yes, Madam Speaker. I think, again, I state that the member is misleading because the bill itself, Madam Speaker, and which was signed into law as an act, did specifically state that every month the businesses could claim back. Also, the specific stock on hand, they had a certain time that they could show that they had passed on those savings in reduced prices. Some businesses did, some didn't. Some even proclaimed that they wouldn't until the government gave them money. The reason why December 23rd happened is that it was a decision made at that time that it's best not to carry that into the new year, but to pay out the businesses for the stock on hand, where they had paid the 9% and they had passed on the savings. Now, Speaker, there were 2 businesses that complied. There were other businesses that didn't. And that's how they were paid out. So the member is misrepresenting that we didn't care about the businesses.
Madam Speaker, I won't belabor this point anymore because I'm actually going to share a presentation I made in this Honorable House a couple of years ago where I gave the timeline and the breakdown in this Honorable House. And I'm going to reshare that again so that the public is reminded by exactly what happened because I think that the leader of the opposition thinks that people may have forgotten. But they haven't forgotten, Madam Speaker. They didn't forget last year, February either. Madam Speaker, I want to continue. So, Madam Speaker, at the end of the day, there were ample opportunities to give relief. Beyond that, Madam Speaker, from the very beginning, GST was overperforming. Not based on what I've said, Madam Speaker, based on what the Honorable Leader of the Opposition would have said on multiple occasions, on multiple platforms, Madam Speaker, in government press conferences, in radio interviews, Madam Speaker, that GST was overperforming. And of course, GST was overperforming, Madam Speaker, because the people were being overtaxed. Once the economy rebounded, Madam Speaker, tourism numbers were back up practically to almost the period right before COVID shut down when we were having record numbers, Madam Speaker. Persons were coming in again. Imports were more regularized again, Madam Speaker. The island was doing well. But you were overtaxing the people. And the records showed that, Madam Speaker. So meanwhile, you're boasting about all of this money that you're amassing and all of these things that you're doing. But the average man on the street is saying to you, this is too much. We can no longer eat out with our families because we have an extra 13% on our bill. Large families saying to you, we don't even go out anymore because it's just too much. You're asking for a break here, there, everywhere, Madam Speaker. Yet, all they could do, Madam Speaker, at the time was give the $500 EC credit to just residents alone on their electricity bills, Madam Speaker. Nothing to the business community, Madam Speaker. All the business community got, Madam Speaker, was reprimands and public belaboring. Madam Speaker, to come to this Honorable House and talk about us not doing enough, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this comprehensive relief package that we have here is one of the most comprehensive, Madam Speaker, ever in existence. When, Madam Speaker, have you had a complete reduction on duties on fuel, Madam Speaker? When have you had government subsidizing electricity at this level, Madam Speaker? Not just saying you're giving a certain grouping a 500 EC dollar credit, Madam Speaker. We're actually saying that we are capping at a particular level for an entire 3-month period, Madam Speaker, not a one-off payment. Madam Speaker, when have you had duties lifted off of freight in this way, Madam Speaker? And I hear them keep saying, oh, 3 months isn't enough, 2 months isn't enough, Madam Speaker. We've already said that, Madam Speaker. This is in the initial instant. We're going to go back and we're going to reassess. We're going to make sure that the government of Anguilla can continue to absorb the relief, Madam Speaker. We're going to continue to see how our revenue heads are performing, how the economy is responding to the relief measures. Because that is what is important, Madam Speaker. Not staying the course, not sticking to the plan, as the Honorable Merrick said when he was on this side. We have to stay the course and continue. Not if you see that there are challenges, Madam Speaker. Not if you see that your people are hurting. There are times when you need to reassess, readjust, Madam Speaker. Because your people, your economy depends on it, Madam Speaker. And we are not in the business, Madam Speaker, of tying our people's hands, tying our businesses' hands and not giving them liquidity, not giving them the opportunity to be able to grow and to flourish. If we are giving to our people, we are also giving to our business community, Madam Speaker. And we are asking our business community to continue to support wherever possible, Madam Speaker. The Honorable Kyle Hodges' team would have done a critical assessment of responses to the GST legislation. And Madam Speaker, for the most part, most businesses responded very well. There are a few anomaly businesses where we don't think they did exactly what they were supposed to do, Madam Speaker. But ultimately, the consumer will decide where they want to consume, where they want to shop, and who they want to support, Madam Speaker, ultimately. But Madam Speaker, this administration remains committed to the people of Anguilla. Because we have a mandate that says to us, when we are in times of crisis, we need to be able to respond effectively to the needs of the people. Not on a whim, not on a rush, but based on data-driven decisions, Madam Speaker. Making decisions that will have the most impact, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we were crying out for times in relation to GST. We're saying, Lord, reduce GST on food. We gave any amount of suggestions, Madam Speaker. You know when GST was removed, Madam Speaker? Effective January 1st, Madam Speaker. Just a little short of 2 months before snap election, Madam Speaker. They said they couldn't make adjustments during the budgetary year and it would have implications and it isn't financially prudent to do. But Madam Speaker, we made the adjustment in August. We did the assessments in August, Madam Speaker. The economy hasn't collapsed. The revenue heads are still performing well, Madam Speaker. And people have more liquidity. The businesses have more liquidity. And the economy is responding. Just ask the restaurants that are full on a nightly basis, Madam Speaker. Look at the boats coming over from St. Martin and the day trippers performing very healthy, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the economy is performing well. Persons are building. So to say, Madam Speaker, that the relief measures that we are putting in place now are not enough is really hypocritical, Madam Speaker. Really hypocritical. When these particular measures have gone far and wide and not one-off things here and there, Madam Speaker. This is 3 solid months of a targeted, systematic approach that helps citizens as well as the business community, Madam Speaker. Because the business community are not our adversaries, Madam Speaker. We are all in this together. If the business community does well, we do well, Madam Speaker, because the business community is who's paying. So, Madam Speaker, I once again thank this Honorable House for suspending the rules today for us to be able to bring this bill to this honorable House in 3 back-to-back readings, Madam Speaker. Because, Madam Speaker, when you have to give relief to the people of Anguilla, time is always of the essence. Madam Speaker, I again want to thank the public servants, customs, and Minister of Finance, the AG's chambers, the Governor's office, for the work that they have done over the last couple of weeks to be able to turn around all of this stuff, Madam Speaker. It's a short window in some cases, but we were able to get it done. And I am grateful because ultimately we are all working in service to the people of Anguilla. So, Madam Speaker, I want to again thank my colleagues for their hard work in relation to these measures. And we will continue to inform the public, Madam Speaker. We will continue to engage the public so the public understands these measures, so that they understand that this initial 3 months in 2 instances and 2 months in 1 instant is for us to continue reassessing, Madam Speaker. It doesn't mean that at the end of the 3 months it will end. It doesn't mean that we want to do more. It means that what we have recognized is that within the next 3 months, we must act, and we must act now, Madam Speaker. And once we look at the data, because we will be assessing the data every single month, Madam Speaker, we will be seeing the revenue performances in the duty areas and all of these different areas that are affected, Madam Speaker. And we will see what we can continue to responsibly do to respond. And we will see what the data is telling us about what's happening in the outside world, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, if you are wondering if we are doing enough, persons need to follow some of the St. Martin platforms, some of the other islands that are sharing the relief posts that I've been making, Madam Speaker. Sharing the relief posts that the government of Anguilla has been making, Madam Speaker. They are impressed by our proactive response. They are shocked in some cases by our response, Madam Speaker. But yet, the opposition is saying, we're not doing enough. We haven't done enough. But I know, Madam Speaker, that, when you sit in the opposition benches, you are expected to say, they should do more, and they should do this, and they should do that. That's part of your job. And of course, when you do make an appearance to the House of Assembly, you need to make sure that persons remember that you were there. I get that, Madam Speaker, I understand that. But we also need to be fair to the people of Anguilla. And we need to acknowledge when strong, sensible policy decisions are made that reflect well thought out care, concern, and data-driven decisions, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, to the people of Valley North and the people of Anguilla generally, we remain committed to delivering on relief wherever possible and working with our people to ensure that everyone can thrive and do well in Anguilla. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any member wish to speak? I recognize the Honorable Single Island White Electoral District Member Vanderpool.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon to yourself, my honorable colleagues on both sides of the aisle, the House of Assembly staff, as well as everyone who's listening via the various means. And Madam Speaker, I hope that everyone has had a blessed Easter. And you don't have to worry about me, Madam Speaker. I'm always on my best behavior. But I too would like to welcome back the Leader of the Opposition. I had really hoped, Madam Speaker, that today, on the heels of Easter, that we would have had a unified House to move towards this relief package to protect the people of Anguilla from what's to come. And Madam Speaker, while the votes may show at the end of the day that both sides of the House are in alignment, I honestly thought we'd have been in and out of here in 30 minutes. But I hope that everyone had a big lunch, is well rested. I can verify that the coffee machine is well stocked, because it seems that, unfortunately, Madam Speaker, we'll be here until tonight, but I don't, for the life of me, understand why. Madam Speaker, the leader of the opposition would have mentioned that the people of Anguilla deserve relief. Madam Speaker, that's the very reason that we are here today. That is the crux and the substance of the matter that we are debating today. We are here to provide that relief that the people so deserve, Madam Speaker. Not for long-winded speeches, not for political diatribes, simply to provide relief that the people deserve. And Madam Speaker, before I get into my remarks, I just want to begin by first thanking the Honorable Premier, the Permanent Secretary of Finance, as well as her team, as well as the Honorable Minister for Economic Development, his peers and their teams, as well as the Comptroller of Customs, yourself, Madam Speaker, the Clerk of the House of Assembly, and everyone who was involved in making today possible. I also want to express my thanks to the AG and her team at the AG's chambers, because while we are here today, and while it seems that persons view this as an opportunity for political point scoring, the reality of the matter is even for us to get here, it took a Herculean effort, Madam Speaker, by a lot of different teams. And I just want to say that I don't want to lose the actual reason of this debate. We are here today, not again for going back and forth, political point scoring, going back to 2012. I'm pretty sure that at some point we might get back to the 19-somethings. But the crux of the debate is we are here because the people of Anguilla deserve relief. Madam Speaker, there's an African proverb that states that when elephants fight, the grass gets trampled. What that means in simple terms, Madam Speaker, is when we look at the great countries, America decides to get into a war with Iran, and now we are here debating the rising cost of fuel and cost of living, which we have absolutely no control over. Madam Speaker, as my colleague, the member for Valley North, would have mentioned, we are moving from CIF, which is cost insurance freight, in terms of how duties are calculated, to free on board. And what that means simply is, if a good costs $100, insurance and freight comes up to $25. Previously, duty would be calculated on that $125. When we look at what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz, where right now, Iran will not allow certain ships to pass, certain companies are not insuring the petroleum ships that pass through, that has a natural increase on the cost of living. Which means that if insurance and freight go from that $25 value to $200, Madam Speaker, we are simply here to say that instead of calculating duties on the $125, we will cap it at $100. So if insurance and freight can rise to $200 or beyond, we are only calculating duties on $100. Now, Madam Speaker, this is something that will bring positive benefits to not only the business community, but to all of the people of Anguilla. And I hear the leader of the opposition when he mentions that, oh, this relief measure should be at least for a minimum period of 12 months. But Madam Speaker, we have been clear in stating that this relief measure is in 3 months in the first instance. Madam Speaker, I'm not sure if the Executive Council minutes are already out, but they will clearly dictate that we have also mandated that within the first 2 months of this 3-month period, that a comprehensive report has to be presented to Council for us to, analyzing the data, understand the economic impact. Madam Speaker, we see the benefits of this measure, not just in terms of the immediate geopolitical situation, but when we think of our competitiveness to St. Martin, when we think about when insurance, freight, and the geopolitical situation normalizes, that this could be an incentive for our local businesses to want to import more, for our people to import more at reduced rates. So while persons will say that this will come at a cost to government, if you increase the frequency and the quantity of what's being imported, it will naturally balance out, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, this is not to say that we are here today and saying after 3 months, oh, well, whatever come you got to deal with. No, Madam Speaker, this is saying that this is 3 months in the first instance while we evaluate the data, while we operate with prudence, and while we can justify the extension going forward. Not saying just 12 months from now or 2 years from now on the will or because it sounds politically expedient, Madam Speaker, but because we have the data to justify why we are making that decision, and that the government of Anguilla and ultimately the people of Anguilla will be better off as a result of that decision, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to highlight the fact that the leader of the opposition would have mentioned that had we transitioned to renewable energy, we would not be here today facing the turmoil and the increase in prices as we have. But Madam Speaker, that absolutely threw me, confused me, and left me bewildered. Because the reality is, Madam Speaker, the leader of the opposition sat as premier and leader of finance for 4.5 going on 5 years, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, last week on April 1st, Anglic would have signed a deal with the Caribbean Development Bank to approve the loan, approve the terms of references, and go forward on phase 1 of their transition plan. A transition plan, Madam Speaker, that was presented to the people of Anguilla years ago. A transition plan that was viable years ago. And Madam Speaker, we would have sat here, heard it on the radio waves in this honorable house, that Anglic cannot transition on their own towards renewable energy because the government of Anguilla would have to co-sign the loan, and that would require the approval by the UK government. Madam Speaker, nothing to all go so. Till now we are here, Anglic has signed this loan, and the government of Anguilla needed to do nothing else but express to the Caribbean Development Bank that this is our policy direction, that transitioning to renewable energies is the way that we want to go. But 4.5 years in, we hear about a PPA the whole long time, but till now we ain't got no solar on the ground. So to talk about the hypocrisy, Madam Speaker, I truly don't understand. And to let you know, through you, Madam Speaker, to the honorable leader of the opposition, we are revising where we are currently at. And I wish that coming in as Minister of Utilities, I had solar or renewables on the ground. But while we are appreciative of the CDB getting to this point, government is evaluating on a daily basis our current situation. So we're not just relying on the CDB loan, we are evaluating, okay, what other government interventions, what other government investments needs to take place in order to protect the people of Anguilla, in order to build resilience, in order to build sustainability, Madam Speaker. So it's one thing to sit down there, but you had 4.5 years. This does not happen overnight. Madam Speaker, as it comes to these measures, the reality is, I'm hoping that once the data comes in, that we can continue this measure into perpetuity, because I do feel, but again, that's just my personal feeling, it has to be supported by the data before we make long-term decisions, that this is a positive move in the right direction, that this will be an incentive to building out economic resiliency for the people of Anguilla. But Madam Speaker, just to say that, you know what, this is not long enough, it doesn't go far enough. Let's say, Madam Speaker, that we had come here today to say that this measure was going to be effective for 12 months. What would we have heard? That it should have been 2 years? That it should have been permanent? Madam Speaker, we can sit here and politically pander and go back and forward about 3 months from now, 12 months from now, 2 years from now. The reality on the ground is the people of Anguilla will be facing price increases effective April 12th. But we are intervening now as these measures come into effect April 10th, the end of this week, Madam Speaker. So we are reacting to the reality, not to the possibility. We are dealing with the situation on the ground, not the options that may be politically convenient for you to present. So, Madam Speaker, I just want to sit, I needed to get off my chest, I just want to sit in not only informed support of this, but as a proud Anguillian, looking at how the government, the different individuals who got it to this point, were able to mobilize to protect our people and to put people first. Madam Speaker, with that, I give my support and I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the honourable member for Road North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to all members of the House. Good afternoon to the staff and everyone who's listening via the various media platforms. Madam Speaker, let me just start off quickly by saying I do stand in support of this bill that's before us. We on this side of the House have been calling for relief measures from the time we saw what was happening with this war. We've been public about it. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, even to go back as far as the budget, we have said that the budget that was passed last year for 2026, that it wasn't enough to absorb shocks. I could remember standing in the same position, Madam Speaker, in awe, in shock, that the budget was looking at taking $73 million from the reserves at that point in time when there was the possibility of maybe war or an altercation happening down in Venezuela. And if you had looked through the entire budget, Madam Speaker, and went through it line by line, figure by figure, you would have realized that at that point in time, there was nothing to absorb the shocks, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, you don't have to worry about me being on my best behavior. Eh? You don't have to worry about that. I am forever on my best behavior. And I do believe when we're in Parliament, we have to behave parliamentary. So rest assured, Madam Speaker, as usual, I'll be on my best behavior. Plus, I have too much of friends on that side to ever not be on my best behavior. But Madam Speaker, the geopolitical issues have been touched. And I won't go into detail, but I'll make a shameless plug. If you want to hear more of what's happening geopolitically and how it's affecting not just Anguilla, but the region, you can tune in on Thursday to 8 p.m. online, Conversations with the Source. Shameless plug, but it is indeed an awesome, awesome program, Madam Speaker, that everyone should listen to. But Madam Speaker, we are here because of the bill before us. And as other members have said before me, the bill does not just, this is not just the only phase that government is attempting to bring relief to the people of Anguilla. And as a citizen of Anguilla, a father, a husband, and I've said that before, a representative, persons who have to stand in the gap for hundreds of other people, I am happy for whatever relief comes for the people of Anguilla, and will always support any relief for the people of Anguilla. We see where government have removed the import fuel duty and the CSF from fuel. And Dr. Webster asked the question, why not longer? Because in April of 2022, Madam Speaker, the APM administration removed the excise tax from fuel. It was removed, Madam Speaker. It was done in April to end in December with the possibility of being renewed. And it has been renewed every year since then, Madam Speaker. The same with GST at the time, Madam Speaker, till we permanently removed it, Madam Speaker. So we're not standing over here just shooting in the dark and screaming from the rooftop that more can be done. We know it's a 3-month period, Madam Speaker. If you have anyone who has a device, you can't help but know what's going on with this war. It's obvious it's not going to finish within 2 or 3 months, Madam Speaker. That is plainly obvious, because every time you turn on the news, tensions are flaring, threats are being thrown. I just heard the Honorable Single Island Wide member said they are jumping ahead. But I know statements were made that we have nothing to worry about. And then quickly after that, we saw that we had something to worry about, because a press release went out to say, hey, freight will be going up. and then a release had to come out, and then another release had to come out. So who is jumping ahead, or what are they jumping ahead of, Madam Speaker? But, Madam Speaker, when you have to renew things like the excise tax, like I said before, that we had removed from fuel, 4 years, Madam Speaker, the persons forgot that, because maybe that wasn't a quote-unquote handout, but that was monies back in the people of Anguilla pocket. Madam Speaker, this administration made the bold move to put a maximum price order on fuel. Way back when, again in 2022, Madam Speaker, that this administration boasts about publicly. And we are glad that it's there, because it doesn't benefit me alone, Madam Speaker, you alone, Madam Speaker, but it benefits everybody when government can put a cap on the fuel. And Madam Speaker, we also see where ANGLEC has increased the fuel surcharge by over 100%, Madam Speaker. 100%, Madam Speaker. Government, again, we say thanks, Madam Speaker, has capped the fuel surcharge at the first 42, and they will pay the 46 cents. We appreciate that. But Madam Speaker, it's for 3 months. We're in April, we got May, June, July. We know what June, July, August is, Madam Speaker, our hottest months. And as much as members could say publicly that we need to look at conserving in those hot months, when you can't sleep, you need to put on your AC and your fan 24/7. That's when that 100% fuel surcharge increase will be kicking in, Madam Speaker. That's 100% increase, Madam Speaker. In summer, Madam Speaker, the children will be at home. So you can see what kind of type of bills the people of Anguilla will be looking at, Madam Speaker. But then I think I understand, because like the honorable single island wide member just said, that ANGLEC has signed to go forward with the US, I think it was announced sometime back, US $20 million to pursue renewables. And our loans have to be paid, Madam Speaker. And ANGLEC has to look at their bottom line, because that loan has to be repaid. And even though the honorable member said government did not have to sign anything, but they're in a good position now, Madam Speaker. They're in a wonderful position. I spoke sometime here back in the House, Madam Speaker, moving into the moldy building, rat-infested building with garbage strewn all over the place, Madam Speaker. That was the government of Anguilla in 2020 when we came in. We rolled up our sleeves, we scrubbed, we varnished, we disinfected, we cleaned out, and we are now here. Because we had one more measure to come through before we can say to the UK, hey, we have our own financial independence. That one measure came in under this administration, Madam Speaker. So we can see things like budget coming in November, because once you fix your figures, you don't have to send all the way to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and then wait weeks for a reply while the civil servants up there go over our work on vacation. So our hands were tied. But rest assured, Madam Speaker, I was speaking to someone who is much wiser than me. And government, while it might not be the quote-unquote contingent liability, if ANGLEC is ever in a jam, government is not going to leave our one electricity supplier go under. Government is going to have to step in and do what they have to do. So maybe one of the things that's now happening is government has obviously given the blessing to say to ANGLEC, you can increase your fuel surcharge by 100%. So these measures, it's 100%. It's 42 now. It has been raised by 46 cents. That's over 100%. And if somebody want to stand up on a point of order about my maths, please do. Please do. So when that fuel surcharge kicks in and government go back to its regular do, the people of Anguilla will be paying that difference, because the cap is only for 3 months. the people will be going back to paying that 88 cents fuel surcharge down the road.
Madam Speaker, on a point of order, the member is misleading, Madam Speaker, because we've already said that at the end of the 3 months, we will do an assessment to see where we're at and decide on the necessary steps of action. So he's really talking about hypotheticals and saying that we are going to go back to there, which is, we don't know if the fuel surcharge will stay as it is. We don't know if it's going to go up, and we need further interventions. And we've said that over and under, Madam Speaker.
Honorable member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The point of order is that it's a hypothetical that you're presenting.
Yes, Madam Speaker, as a God-fearing man, tomorrow is not promised. Tomorrow is not promised.
But you can't make your submission on a hypothetical.
Madam Speaker, I am basing my submission on the fact. I just want to just go by the facts.
Okay, yes, facts
Governor,
are good.
Anglec has raised their fuel surcharge by 100%, from 42 cents to 88 cents. That's a fact. Government has agreed to cap the 46 cents for the next 3 months. That's a fact. Sorry, 42. That's a fact. The same way, Madam Speaker, if I am speaking in hypotheticals, the government side is speaking in hypotheticals because they don't know what's going to happen after those 3 months. Maybe after those 3 months, Madam Speaker, if we're going to all speak in hypotheticals, it will be raised to a whole dollar, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, on a point of order,
Point of order, proceed.
just the member would have said that government is speaking in hypotheticals, and I would have simply said in my argument just now that we are dealing with what's before us today. The reason for the 3 months is because we are assessing, we will have the data, conduct a review, and figure out what is to come before deciding whether we should extend, how long we should extend, or make this a permanent measure. But I made it categorically clear, Madam Speaker, that we are addressing the situation on the ground today. So the fact that the member could say that government is speaking in hypotheticals is misleading.
Okay, let's not lose sight of the point of order. The original point of order was from the honorable member from Valley North in respect of, the original point of order was in respect of representing that it could go up or it could stay there. And I think the point of order is that it was a bit of a speculative point that you were making and that you should confine the submission to something factual. Yeah, I do take note that nobody challenged your math and that was purely factual, but they're challenging you presenting a hypothetical in an instance where they're indicating that it's a temporary measure and that they may come back to assess. And I think that's fair.
But Madam Speaker, to be fair, it's for 3 months, Madam Speaker. It ends at 3 months. It ends at 3 months. Is there an argument, Madam Speaker, that the measures are for 3 months? Is there an argument about that, Madam Speaker, through you?
What I understand, hold the points. What I understand is that it is a temporary measure and that there's room for assessment, revision, and possibly coming back for an extension. Nobody has a crystal ball, so nobody knows. The war may end tomorrow, nobody knows. But what I understand is that we all agree it is for 3 months. The legislation that's on the floor says, Section 2(1), the act expires 3 months after the date. That's not in dispute, okay? No side disputes that. No, I'm confining it to the bill. What is in dispute is that the member for Valley North is suggesting to you that perhaps it is not appropriate to speculate when it is that the government side has represented that they will assess and they may come back and ask the House to sit again and extend. We've seen extensions and revisions on legislation all the time. They agree with you that it does say it is for 3 months. What they do not agree with you is that it cannot be represented that that's the end all of a temporary urgent measure. That's all.
But Madam Speaker, until something comes to the House, it ends at the 3 months, Madam Speaker. Until that happens, it's 3 months. Madam Speaker, if they had come here and say 6 months, at 6 months, it would end at 6 months. So, Madam Speaker, they can say, I'm speaking a hypothetical, but the bill, the relief on electricity, they said 3 months, Madam Speaker. I am not arguing that it didn't say 3 months, and I'm thankful for it, Madam Speaker. But at the end of the day, it ended at 3 months. When they reassess it, and if they figure it can go for another 3 months, then we will be thankful for a further 3 months.
Well, that's all the honorable member raised objection to say.
But
She's
I'm not
only
saying
saying
it-
to you that you're correct, but she's only saying to you, don't represent to the public that that's the end, because they have argued today. They have argued, and I know each side is doing what they have to do, but we have to remember who you're doing it for. The public is following you, and all the member is saying is, there's no need, Honorable Member Vanterpool. All the member is saying is, yes, we agree that it's 3 months, but also please say that we are going to assess and come back. It's not the end all. Everybody's saying the same thing. I think we all realize that, right? Everybody's saying the same
That
thing.
it ends at 3 months.
It may or may not, is what there's, the caption of the bill, let us not mislead. The caption of the bill is called, or the title, I should say, that was read once already, is Customs, in brackets, Temporary Modification of Valuation of Import Duty Act 2026. It is not a substantive, permanent piece of legislation. If anybody wants to take these points, please take them to the radio. All this says is that it's a temporary modification. It's not a permanent legislative amendment. So we all are saying the same thing. Let's move on.
And Madam Speaker, I have not said anything, but with due respect, Madam Speaker, when a point is being made and it's being challenged, I understand you, and you have authority within this House to say move on. But sometimes clarity is needed. Madam Speaker, I made a point recently about GST on electricity, and persons were shocked because they thought that GST was up from electricity. So, Madam Speaker, the other reason that we are here is to bring clarity to the listening public. And the clarity for me is to say that in 3 months, this relief package will end in 3 months. If the government comes back and extends it for 6 months or for a year, so be it. But as it stands, the relief package is for 3 months. And that's all I'm saying, Madam Speaker. I'm also saying, Madam Speaker, that during the summer, when the 3 months have finished, during that time, we are going to be running our fans, we are going to be running our ACs, our children will be going to school. And at that time, because the fuel surcharge is 88 cents until Anguilla chooses to do it differently, the war might extend, hypothetically, and they might have to go up to $1.08, Madam Speaker.
But that's the point I'm making, Honorable Member, which you know. We can't submit on hypotheticals. So I take your point that you want the government to be conscious that 3 months is not enough. That's the opposition's point. Okay, that's your point.
Thank you.
The point of order I'm ruling on is a point of order that says there's an objection to you suggesting that this is an end-all permanent piece of legislation when it's not.
Not to cut you across,
It's-
Madam
it's
Speaker,
not
but
a permanent-
At no point did I say it's a permanent measure. My point, Madam Speaker, and I know, and I'm thankful we have the Hansard and it can be checked after. I was making the point that in summer, when we are running our fans, when we are running our ACs, when this relief measure ends, because this is when the relief measure ends, that's in summertime, Madam Speaker. That's the point I was making. And it's the only point I've been making, Madam Speaker. Because anything else, both of us will be dealing in hypotheticals, Madam Speaker. But like I was saying also, Madam Speaker,
I recognize Honorable Member
Thank you.
Sandy Hill.
On a point of order, Madam Speaker, and just to help move the conversation along, because in my presentation, I did state that it is not an untargeted concession without limit or structure. It is a temporary stabilization measure designed to cushion the impact of unusual and elevated external costs while preserving government's ability to monitor conditions carefully and reassess the position after the 3-month period expires. And so perhaps it is that if the member will continue and say, in the event the government of Anguilla does not extend or revisit or reassess, then the cost will go up. But short of saying that, it gives the public the impression that it comes to an end, the price doubles, and all of a sudden during the summer, we're going to have the highest prices of electricity. I think that that's a misrepresentation. So I would invite the member to re-examine the statement and include if the government does not reassess. Thank you.
No, Honorable Member for Island Harbor, the point of order is not trying to dictate the presentation. The point of order, Honorable member for Road North, the point of order that was further positioned just now is with respect to speculation. Submissions are not to be based on speculation. What you have said prior to the first point of order was speculative, and it's suggestive that this is a permanent amendment to the legislation. You can phrase it and clarify it however you want. You can stand and you can make your point. Make your point as just however you want it. Make your point.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate it. And Madam Speaker, I've exhausted the point over and over, but like I said, this is a 3-month measure. It's a 3-month period of relief. We on this side are happy that we are getting some relief. The people of Anguilla is happy that we are getting some measure of relief. But this fact remains, it's a 3-month period. In my previous point, when I was speaking about gas, I made a point that in April of 2022, the decision was made to remove the excise tax and GST from fuel, and it was made from April to December of 2022, and it has been renewed every year since. This administration renewed it again in December of 2025 for 2026. So we do know that measures can be carried on. But we also know that when the measures are made for such a short period, it's a reason why it was made for such a short period. There's obviously a reason why it was made for such a short period. And ANGLEC being the largest, government being the largest shareholder in ANGLEC, it's obvious that ANGLEC has to meet their bottom line. They now have a $20 million US loan that I'm assuming they have to be paid back. And when that loan has to be paid back, monies have to come from somewhere. And even though fuel surcharge was not designed to be for profit, it can be used for profit. Because our administration negotiated with the last board when we were there to bring it down from 60 cents to 42 cents. But now we are seeing that it has jumped up to the 88 cents, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, in October of 2024, the Dr. Webster's led administration gave over $3 million in electricity credits to the public. There was a lot of poo-poo, Anguillians don't need handouts. This is not a way to do it. But we didn't go to each person and say, here's a $500. We paid that directly to ANGLEC. So that covered the fuel surcharge, it covered the GST on their bill, and the bill itself. What that meant is over 6,000 households had $500 in their pockets, $500 that they can spend in the economy. Now, right. And we did that 3 times, Madam Speaker. 3 times, coming up to at least $3 million each time, Madam Speaker. We are seeing a fleet of initiatives. Again, we say we are thankful for them, but they're working out to $3 million a month. $3 million a month, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I don't know if you've ever been to a church where they say when the collection plate is about to be handed around, we appreciate the jingles, but we prefer the paper. We appreciate these little jingles, Madam Speaker, but we would have preferred the paper. These initiatives, Madam Speaker, along with all the other initiatives, Madam Speaker, comes up, as the Honorable Premier said, $10 million, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Honorable Premier also said for the first quarter, we made $77 million from that AI alone, Madam Speaker. That's $26 million a month. $26 million a month from that AI. The budget predicted that it would have been $21 million a month, Madam Speaker. So we're averaging $5 million each month more than was budgeted for. Now, I understand the Honorable Premier's point that when it comes to certain revenue generating heads, you have to be a little careful because when you go to those lean months, they don't operate as well. But we are talking that AI. That AI operates whether it's lean, fat, stocky, chubby. It does not matter, Madam Speaker. That AI is operating at that level. So if in January, there's a $5 million more than was budgeted for. February, there's a $5 million that was budgeted for. March, there's that's $15 million, Madam Speaker. And all the experts, even Mr. Vanderpool himself has said, it will continue to be that way. He said that in a press conference, Madam Speaker. It will continue to increase. So while we can be careful with customs duties and other revenue generating heads, we already see what's happening with that AI. Why not use that to ease the burden on the people, Madam Speaker? Because we are giving a measly $3 million back to the people. When that AI is bringing in $26 billion, $5 million over what was budgeted for. So it's not that we are just guessing over here that government can do more. We know government can do more. The figures say that government can do more. That's what the argument is, Madam Speaker. And it's not about being hypocritical, because when we were on that side of the aisle, Madam Speaker, in addition to the credits, the electricity credit, gave food vouchers, we gave Senior Shield, we gave Junior Shield, and we also did $43 million in tax breaks for the people of Anguilla, Madam Speaker. $43 million that went back into the pockets of the people of Anguilla. So it's not a novel idea for a government to give tax breaks. Everyone sees what's going to happen. Everyone sees this impending doom that's going to be coming down, and we all can look, like I said earlier, at the news and know this is not going to be a overnight something. It's going to be operating for a while. So, Madam Speaker, we also heard the Honorable Premier said that duties is not performing as well as it should. Sorry, I don't want to misquote. That is barely operating above what was budgeted for. I think those were her exact words. Yes, those were her words, to paraphrase. But my question is that happening because the reporting part has been removed? So we go back to the days of persons under invoicing? Because, Madam Speaker, one of the reasons why there was such a disparity in what GST brought in the initial stages is because there wasn't a lot of data in the initial stages, and persons were known to under invoice, which was the thing of the day. If you go St. Martin, I go St. Martin, they recognize we got an Anguillan accent and say, you want special invoice? It was the thing of the day. And there was a lot of persons who partake in that. So when it came to the early days of GST and what had to be budgeted for, now that when persons come in, they had to report fully, they realize, hey, if I don't report properly, I won't get back my claim backs. So everyone was reporting properly. Now that the reporting part has been removed from the GST, from the goods and services legislation, the general services legislation, sorry. Now that that has been removed, what is the incentive? What is the incentive? So is that one of the reasons why we are not seeing customs performing a lot better than what that was expected? So, Madam Speaker, I say again, we do appreciate the jingles, but we would definitely prefer the paper. And Madam Speaker, we heard the members speak of the quick turnaround and the heavy lifting and all the work that went into getting this legislation here before us. And we thank everyone who put in the hard work. The ministers, the ministries, executive council to get us here. But Madam Speaker, in December of 2024, we sat here in this honorable house and basically agreed to remove the bulk petroleum levy. When it went in, the then members of this aisle filed and argued and said, it's going to increase the price of fuel. It's going to increase the price of fuel. And we knew, but we knew that that would have happened. But we also knew the measures that we were operating under. Like I said, the mansion is shining now when people forget quickly. Because they always say, oh, you had 4.5 years, you had 4.5 years. Because the mansion is shining now. This furniture is well polished. There's brand new vehicles in the garage. Everything is hunky-dory. But in 2020, it wasn't so. We were under immense pressure. But like Dr. Webster said earlier, once we started to see our way, there were things that we removed. And bulk petroleum levy is one of those bills that we said, okay, the country is in a now better place. We can now reduce the bulk petroleum levy from the $750,000 per company back to the $200,000. This was done in December of 2024 for the budget. And all the reassessing, the realigning and reconfiguring, the bulk petroleum levy was not touched in 2025. It remained there. We're in March of 2026, and the bulk petroleum levy is still there. It's still there. Now, I can honestly say, Executive Council minutes don't come out as quickly as I would like. We sometimes get them months after, understandable. Sometimes there are some Executive Council minutes that we don't even see. But as of the last time I checked the Executive Council minutes, the bulk petroleum levy is still there. Now, when we were doing all this heavy lifting to come to this honorable house today, it's a simple amendment. As far as I can see it, I'm not the expert here. But I remember one time when we were removing GST of entertainment, within a week we came to the house 3 times to make amendments to it. So why can't we get the amendment for the bulk petroleum levy come to this honorable house? Because we're here talking about relief for the people of Anguilla. That is what we are here for. We are talking about relief for the people of Anguilla. And the more relief we can bring for the people of Anguilla, the better for the people of Anguilla. And there's a bulk petroleum levy that's been sitting there that from 2024, it has been factored into all the revenue streams and everything by the Ministry of Finance has taken it out. It's not accounted for, but we can't remove it as yet. 2025 passed, we're in March of 2026. Maybe it's gonna come later in the year because I suspect that they're waiting for them to pay it. And once they pay it for the first quarter, then they'll remove it. Because we've been asking for this for a while. Port fees. When the port fees were raised, again, under the pressures because of what ASPA was doing at the time, we had to make sure that ASPA was recovered, that it was rescued. Port fees did what were raised. And again, the then members of this side went on, the port fees are killing us, the port fees are killing us, the port fees are killing us. But in the point plans, we heard nothing addressed about port fees. The same port fees are still there. The same port fees are still there. We haven't seen any changes. So when we on this side of the aisle say, more can be done, literally more can be done. More can be done when $26 million is coming in every month from that AI, and we are giving back the people $3 million. $26 million every month. And we are giving back the people of Anguilla $3 million a month. Well, $3 million per month. It's $10 million for overtime. Yeah. So, Madam Speaker, we also see where this administration pedal to the metal, full speed ahead to purchase a house in the UK. Full speed ahead to purchase a house in the UK. And Madam Speaker, I'm going to go on rough waters again because I personally feel that when my premier, the Honorable Premier of Anguilla, make a statement at a press conference, I believe I should take it as her word. Unless I see she comes back the following week and says, I misquoted. If our Honorable Premier make a statement at a press conference, I will run with that. The Minister of Finance make a statement about our finances, I will run with that. Because that's my Premier, Madam Speaker. That's the Honorable Premier of Anguilla. So when the Honorable Premier of Anguilla sits in a press conference and says that we've ring-fenced $6 million, $16 million to purchase a house in the UK, it might not have been said in here, but it was said by the Honorable Premier. So I think I have right to bring it in here. So again, we see about to pay $16 million in the UK for a house. And the Honorable Premier said that's going to be strict.
On a point of order, Madam Speaker. I'm so disappointed. Madam Speaker, I think that the honorable member for North Hill, Road North, sorry, does not understand the distinction between ring fencing, a certain sum, which is a general amount that's ring fenced, and the actual cost of an item. And they're totally different. And I want the people of Anguilla to understand that in December of 2025, I would have announced that as a result of the underspend in the 2025 budget, the government of Anguilla was able to ring fence between $5 and $6 million for the purchase of a building in the UK. When the questions were asked by the honorable member of North Hill in the House of Assembly, he specifically asked what is the cost of the building. And my response was that there was no purchase price as yet because we were still in the exploratory phase. And as a result of that, there could be no figure that was attributed to the particular building at the time. And so, Madam Speaker, it is a misrepresentation for the members of opposition to stand in this honorable house and give the public the impression that because we have ring-fenced a certain amount of money to accommodate the purchase of a government office in the UK, that that is the cost of the building. And that is incorrect. And I would ask the members to refrain from misrepresenting and misleading the people of Anguilla. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Member for Road North, what is your response to the Honorable Premier's statement in respect of her point of order?
Thank you again, Madam Speaker, and thank you, member, for that interjection. But I'll repeat, Madam Speaker, if I'm listening to a press conference and my Honorable Premier, my Honorable Minister for Economic Development, my Honorable Minister for Education, my Honorable Minister for Health make a statement.
What date was the press conference that you're referring to, just so that when she expands, she can have a point of reference for herself?
27th of...
What date?
27th of January, 2026, Madam Speaker.
Okay, 27th January 2026 predates the questions that were posed on our Hansard. I'll draw your reference, Honorable Member, and you can have a seat because I'll go through this for the last time. The meeting that was convened on the 10th of February 2026, that is after your reference to a press conference on the 27th of January 2026. Question at 10:33 a.m. Question 3. What is the total cost of the purchase, including fees, taxes, associated expenses, and from which budget lines will it be financed? This is on the website, this is on the Hansard, so you're free to follow, Honorable Member. Response from the Honorable Premier at 10:33 and 26 seconds. Madam Speaker, as of today, government has not purchased any property in the United Kingdom, and therefore no final purchase price has been incurred. For the avoidance of doubt, any proposed acquisition would be subject to a rigorous due diligence process designed to protect the public interest and ensure value for money. Nobody's trying to curtail your ability to reference things that you've heard, but when you're referencing things that you've heard outside of this house, you're going to have to bring that material for me so that I can rule on the point of order. All I have is that you've confirmed that you've heard this from the Premier on the 27th of January 2026, and all I have in front of me is what was said in response to your own questions on 10th February.
Madam Speaker, I
You may
also
respond.
I also have a snapshot of the points that were printed on the government's Facebook page, listing out when the Premier said that. But my point, Madam Speaker,
What was the point, that there was an allocation or that there was money
that there was
spent
money,
on a house?
No, that there was money ring fence. And that's the point I am speaking of, Madam Speaker. I'm saying that the Honorable Premier said that there's a $5 to $6 million ring fence for the house. So in other words, Madam Speaker, and I know I don't have to break it down for you, there's a ballpark figure that they're looking at. Okay, maybe they want me to use the 5 million, which is 13 million, but I'm using the high end.
Actually, honorable member and all members, I want people to submit on facts. I'm not going to entertain submissions on
But Madam Speaker,
I'm not going to entertain submissions on crystal balls because I don't have one.
But I can send it now to you, Madam Speaker.
No, I don't.
directly.
All I want to know is if you have, you're making a statement, and the point has been led from your leader. The suggestion was all day that there's a priority to spend this money on a house. Okay, fine, whatever. But if there's a priority to spend this money on a house, it's different from saying this money was spent on a house.
I did not say it was.
But the honorable member for Road South, you have a problem with me exploring the point of order with the honorable member? He's not debating the speaker, and that's for your information. He's clarifying the point of order that he's answering. Honorable member for Road North, the point of order that has been made all day, which nobody on this side, of course, agrees on, is that the government side is saying to you, you cannot suggest, and the honorable leader has actually made a statement that he's since withdrawn, that 16 million is spent on a house. You're making that point to suggest that they can go further in their relief.
Madam Speaker, again, with all due respect, and we can check the hand, and I don't mind pausing so we can check the hands off. My point is, I did not say that the monies were spent on the house. I said, and again, we can check back the Hansard. I said we are going full speed ahead, looking to purchase a house in the UK. And I referenced the Madam Premier, where she said in a press conference that we have ring-fenced $5 to $6 million US. I did not say at any point in time that we've purchased the house. The questions were asked in here in this honorable house, and they were clarified because we got a set of different answers that were made in the press conference, and it was clarified. So at no point, Madam Speaker, did I say that we've purchased the house. I said if my honorable Premier makes a statement in a press conference, in public, I should be able to use that. And I'm not saying that the house is purchased. I've said, and we can go back again and check the Hansard, and I don't mind sitting down for a while we check it. I said they are full speed ahead to purchase the house in the UK, looking at it for $16 million, but they're giving the people of Anguilla $3 million in relief. I did not say that the house was purchased. And I'm saying the $6 million is based, Madam Speaker, on the press conference. I have the notes here that I'm looking at that was printed on the Government of Anguilla Facebook page.
Honorable member for Sandy Hill.
Yes,
your
thank you,
response.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the idea behind ring fencing means that you've secured or set aside that amount. It doesn't mean that the property is costing that sum. So at the end of the day, once the sale has been entered, it could be 2 million, it could be 3 million. It doesn't have to be the full 6 million, but the ring fencing is simply set aside to allow that space, but it doesn't mean that the building is going to cost that amount. And so I would ask the members to refrain from attempting to mislead the public, because at the end of the day, the public is being fed the misinformation that the property costs $16 million. And so I would ask the members to be able to speak based on facts and not based on supposition. Thank you.
You might want to let your colleague know that he will have his opportunity to submit. You're perfectly able to submit and answer on your own. Do you have a response to the honorable member's
Madam Sp-
statement about
Yes, Madam
the point you're
Speaker.
making?
In the same vein that the Honorable Premier Member for Sandy Hill is saying it can cost 2 million, it can cost 10, it could cost the people of Anguilla 12. Because she's basing on a hypothetical, that's like I am basing on a hypothetical. But I am not basing on a hypothetical, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my Honorable Premier sat in a press conference in January of this year. And knowingly, Madam Speaker, because I didn't want to jump into that vein, knowingly that we were in January, and we couldn't be using underspend from the previous year. But my Honorable Premier said that monies were ring-fenced, $5 to $6 million. At no point did I say the house is costing that money. At no point did I say that we purchase it. What I said is that we are full speed ahead. We are full speed ahead looking to purchase this building, and we are giving the people $3 million in relief. That's my point, Madam Speaker. And again, when we check back the Hansard, if I did say we purchase, then I would have to apologize. But I know I did not say purchase. I said we are full speed ahead, Madam Speaker.
Honorable member for Sandy Hill, the response is that the honorable member for Road North feels that it's appropriate for him to say that in fact, your priorities are to be on, I'm paraphrasing what I think you're saying, you can correct me. Your priorities are misplaced because it's in respect of the house that might likely cost upwards of 16 or less or more, and that your priorities right now should be to do more in the relief. That's what you're saying.
Your
Do
words,
you
Madam
find that objectionable if it's said in that way?
Madam Speaker, I think that the member has adequately expressed to the public that ring fencing does not mean that there's been a purchase. He has also acknowledged that it does not mean that we've indicated that that's what the building in the UK would cost. And so as a result, I think that he has adequately expressed to the public the facts. And, Madam Speaker, in relation to the full speed ahead, I came to the public in relation to the acquisition of a building in the UK in December of 2025, and we're now in April of 2026. So I don't know what speed
So the point
member.
he's only trying to make, as we now say it, I think we are all going to agree. I think that the prorogation period, we kind of forgot that we cannot submit on hypotheticals. We are all going to agree that there's no house purchased, there's a ring fencing, it does not mean it's bought, but the point that the
And no
honorable
figure.
member is making is that he would prefer that the priority be on more relief as opposed to the house.
And that is why we're here today, Madam Speaker, but thank you.
We all want the same things, whether you think you're debating the speaker or not. We're just trying to clarify that, one, you know that I'm not going to let you submit on hypotheticals, but I understand the point you're making, and I think the member now understands the point you're making.
Madam Speaker, you know I will always yield to your wisdom.
No. Proceed. No.
But Madam Speaker, it also raises the point, then, what can I trust from my leaders at press conferences then?
Member, we ended at a good place a while ago. Let's stay on that good place. If you're going to bring anything about press conferences in the future, you're going to have to bring the transcript for me because I don't watch any of them. So let's stay on the good note.
No problem, Madam Speaker. I will send this to the clerk and the others so that it can be printed. Just to refresh the other members on the other side so that
No,
they
of
can
course,
see it
but
what's
the
there.
press conference you're referring to, if I accept it, because I haven't seen it, it was January, and the answers that I have, I'm only going to go by what's in front of me. So in the future, you're perfectly fine to bring whatever you want, but you can't just make things up and say that you were here or say that that was done if you don't bring it, okay? Move on.
As usual, we'll be led by your wisdom again, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I was very close to the end, you know. I think I'm finishing up. I wasn't supposed to take this long, actually. I think the point of orders were longer than my presentation, actually. Madam Speaker, also in the 2026 budget, there's a $40.5 million amount. $40.5 million to purchase what we call the old NBA building, which now house government offices. Coincidentally, I think that's the same amount that is on lien or whatever the situation is with Bank of Dominica. $40.5 million. Where that figure come from, we don't know. Because in the committee stage at budget, Madam Speaker, when we asked the Director of Lands if a survey has been done, what was the reason to come up with this figure, there was none. There was none at the time, Madam Speaker. But there's a budget line item for $40.5 million. And Madam Speaker, it can be argued, and it has been argued, that that building already belongs to the government of Anguilla, paid for in the banking resolution. So why are we proceeding to burden the taxpayers of Anguilla with $40.5 million for a building that they already paid for? $40.5 million, Madam Speaker. You know how much months of relief that could bring? Especially if you're only doing $3 million a month. That's about, I don't know, 16 months, a year and a half maybe. Somebody could do the quick maths for me. But $40.5 million, Madam Speaker. Think of what that can do for the people of Anguilla. And then, Madam Speaker, shouldn't we now rethink the budget? Should a supplementary be coming? Because there's still that $73 million that is planned to be taken from the reserves. $73 million is planned to go from the reserves. And there are different plans that you hear afoot that we know that at some point in time we're going to have to be here for a supplementary that is going to increase our $631 million budget. Because when purchases are made in the UK, whether it's for $2 million, whether it's for $3 million, there's going to be a recurrent cost, Madam Speaker. And annually, the government of Anguilla are going to have to be paying taxes to the UK. Every year, once that building is charged. I won't call a figure because figures seem to be getting me in trouble this evening. So I won't mention a figure.
No, not figures. Speculating is getting you into problems today, but you speculating.
Thank you again, Madam Speaker. But there's going to be a cost. And if there's going to be a recurring cost, we have to come back to this House with a supplementary. So I'm suggesting when we come back with a supplementary, cuts and checks and makers, like I said, we just have to turn on our news and we're going to realize that this war is not going to be over tomorrow. I can't predict how long it will be, but it won't be over tomorrow. So we have to rethink whatever amount we're going to be spending at our house in the UK, the first cost and the recurrent costs. That $40.5 million that we are going to purchase a building that we already purchased for in the banking resolution, that costs this entire country over $500 million that we are still paying down on. But we want to purchase that building again. The $73 million that we are about to take from reserves, maybe that $73 million that they want to take to reserves to balance the budget, again, we could look at spreading that over time to go back into the peoples of Anguilla pockets. We are thankful. We appreciate the jingles, but we would definitely prefer the paper, Madam Speaker. So when we say that more can be done, we are not just pulling it out in it by the part. We know more can be done. AI is overperforming by $5 million a month. And we are giving, this is the overperformance of that AI. I'm not talking about what is coming in on a regular, this is the overperformance. And we are giving back $3 million, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I know we can do go. Madam Speaker, in a press release yesterday, we saw that Customs urging members of the public to monitor the receipts, to report if there's any misgivings. But Madam Speaker, I wonder if these changes is going to go where I think that we are targeting for. Because I think we are targeting more than anything food costs, because everybody don't have to drive. Matter of fact, this might be a good time to get bikes and get an exercise. Everybody don't have to drive, so we don't have to worry about gas, but everybody have to eat. Everybody have to eat. And again, I could be wrong, but I think I saw in the press release, we are capping that 42 cents for domestic, and we are looking at residential. But I don't remember seeing anything specific about the supermarkets, and I please stand up on a pointed order if there's something specific for the supermarkets.
On a point of order, Madam Speaker, and just because the member has asked, the press release would have said domestic consumers. And what that meant in government terms, domestic meaning within the country, which means that, and the easy way to look at it is for all for the accommodation sector, hotels, villas, guest houses pay 65 cents per kilowatt hour, and everyone else pays 42 cents per kilowatt hour. That includes supermarkets.
Thanks for the explanation, Honorable Premier. But my point remains, Madam Speaker. That fuel surcharge, we can laugh all we want on the other side, but at 88 cents, like I said, somebody told me years ago, when oil goes up, it goes up like a rocket, but it comes down like a feather. It takes forever to come down. The Honorable Single Island-wide member just said, Anglec have a 20, he did not say the amount, so I don't want to quote him, but he said just last week, Anglec signed to move forward with that loan from CDB. That loan has to be paid. Anglec has to meet their bottom line. They're a private company. They're going to be looking at their profits. That fuel surcharge that increased by over 100%, unless government plans for the next few years to keep covering that fuel surcharge, that's going to be a problem for us. So, Madam Speaker, I'll close by saying, we like the jingles. We appreciate the jingles, but we would definitely prefer a little bit more paper. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the Honorable Member for Road South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I think it was a member, the Single Island-wide member, Mr. Joseph Van der Poel, who said that he thought we'd been here for a quick 30-minute session and be out. And we've been here for 3 hours and 3 minutes thus far, Madam Speaker. And it seems as if we're going to be in here beyond sunset. We're here to debate a bill, Madam Speaker, shortly entitled A Bill for Customs Temporary Modification of Valuation on Import Duty Act 2026. And we have suspended the rules of procedure to allow for the first, second, and third reading. And I believe the single wide member said that because he recognized that there will be a unanimous position as it relates to granting this sort of relief, Madam Speaker. Because the Anguilla Progressive Movement have showed time and time again that even though we are in the opposition benches, which won't be permanent, because nobody is in government permanent, whether it's Denzel Douglas, whether it's Gaddafi, or whether it's Saddam Hussein, everybody, or whether it's Hubert Hughes, or Victor Banks, or Osmond Fleming, or Emil Gumbs, or James Ron Webster, nobody is in power forever, and nobody is in opposition forever. And, Madam Speaker, the Anguilla Progressive Movement have demonstrated time and time again that every time something comes to this honorable house that is good for the people of Anguilla, we are in full support of it. And this is no different. This is no different. But all we are saying is that it does not go far enough. And we're saying that for a number of reasons, and there can be no hypocrisy around it. Because time and time again, as members of the government of Anguilla, Madam Speaker, we have shown that we have come to this honorable house time and time and time again to change tax structures, to remove duties, to remove GST on a number of issues, Madam Speaker. And let us even go back further to the GST bill, Madam Speaker. A number of us sat in the Executive Council, Madam Speaker, when the GST bill was being proposed, Madam Speaker. And one of those persons are now sitting in the government's benches, and that's Honorable Kyle Hart, who was the Minister of Economic Development in the Anguilla Progressive Movement Administration, Madam Speaker. And when the studies and all that analysis came back, and they were insisting that we should go to the 17%. As a matter of fact, Madam Speaker, the government's financial advisor at the time, Mr. Stephen Turnbull, he continuously stated that we should go to the 17% and not the lowest flow of 13%, because 13% was the lowest flow that you can go to. And we insisted, all of us unanimously, including the Honorable Kyle Hodge, that we should go to the lowest flow. And he said the reason why we should go to the highest ceiling, which is 17%, is because if we did not meet those figures, he did not believe we could meet those figures. And if we did not meet those figures, then it would be politically damaging to come back to the people to raise the GST from 13% upwards to 17%. I could understand his argument, but we insisted unanimously that as the Executive Council, yes, we do cherish your advice, and we loved his advice because he was a good guy. But we are taking our chances, and we're going with the lowest possible flow, Madam Speaker. And it goes even beyond that, Madam Speaker, because when we were bullish on the possibilities of tourism, Madam Speaker, when we developed the bubble, and we didn't develop the bubble on our own, there was a lot of persons who worked with us to develop the bubble, including hoteliers, who we met every Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, it is, at 4 o'clock. Every Friday, religiously, at 4 o'clock, we met with the hospitality sector, Madam Speaker. And we had a lot of consultations, and Quincy Gomes-Marie was the lead person in operating the bubble. And people are very critical of it, because we're opening the country to economic opportunities, Madam Speaker. And I know the Honorable Member who's now the Honorable Member for Valley North, she also supported that position of reopening the country through the bubble process, Madam Speaker. 100%, she was on board with us on that. And Madam Speaker, when I was very bullish on the possibility of us quickly regain our stature as a leading luxury hospitality destination, the outside advisors who sat in the Executive Council chambers did not. They said, no, we will not get back to those levels. We will not be able to command the average daily rate. And I said, yes, we will. Yes, we can, Madam Speaker. And just a few weeks ago, Madam Speaker, I was on a radio show. And I said to the people of Anguilla that I am extremely confident and bullish on Anguilla's tourism prospects. I am even more confident about Anguilla's tourism growth today than it was yesterday, Madam Speaker. And it is because of the crisis that the world is seeing. It is because of what has happened in Iran, Madam Speaker, why we will continually see record numbers of tourism arrivals into this country, Madam Speaker. Our tourism numbers will continue to grow. And in so doing, the coffers of the government of Anguilla, the coffers of the people of Anguilla will continue to grow and expand exponentially. And that is why we say that the government can do more. Because what has happened in the Middle East is something that was predictable. So when the Honorable Premier said in a press conference in March of this year that she didn't think that that will have an impact on Anguilla, that was not looking at the tea leaves, Madam Speaker, and what was happening. Because for many years, Iran have said to everyone, in particular the United States of America, if you so attack us, we will attack American interests in the region. And if you go back to 1974, Madam Speaker, when the king of Saudi Arabia signed an agreement for the petrodollar, thus requiring every country in the world to hold US dollars and to trade in dollars. And Nixon coming off the gold standard thereafter, Madam Speaker. It means, therefore, that America was strong in all of those Gulf states, UAE, Saudi, Qatar, Dubai, etc. All of them were in the hands of the United States of America. Every one of them had bases in the United States bases. Every one of them had significant investments in their particular country. So much so, Madam Speaker, that Dubai, that was an oil-rich nation, completely diversified their economy into services and tourism. Went heavily into services and tourism, so much so that the Dubai International Airport was one of the most visited airports in the world, Madam Speaker. A lot of American investment. You had the data centers, Amazon, you name it, all investing in that part of the world. 90% of the population of the UAE is outside of the UAE, Madam Speaker. Significant immigrants and so forth. And Iran said, these are the things that we will do. Saudi Arabia said, these are the things that will happen. Everybody said, these are the things that will happen, Madam Speaker. But for whatever reasons that we know that we can't speak of, in this honorable house, the United States decided, and another country that you can't call its name, decided that it should attack Iran. And what did Iran do? Iran did exactly what Iran said it would do, which was predictable. And Trump said, well, I didn't expect them to do what they said they would do. And what they did is attack all of these US interests in the United Arab Emirates. And one of the things that we must remember, that it was about 2 or 3 years ago that Saudi Arabia announced that they were going to diversify heavily into tourism, investing over $1 trillion to develop a tourism belt, Madam Speaker, and lifting a 76-year ban on drinking alcohol in Saudi Arabia in preparation for this tourism boom that they were expecting, because you know Mecca, Medina are heavily visited tourism sites. And Dubai was a site that most people visited and loved to visit. There are people in this house who have been to Dubai. I haven't, but not because I didn't want to go. My opportunity is now lost. But that's okay, Madam Speaker, because all of those people, especially those affluent people who are traveling to Dubai, will be coming to the most beautiful destination in the Caribbean and perhaps in the world, and that is the country of Anguilla. The only things that we need to do is ensure that we don't have any crime and violence, in particular gun-related violence, and we need to clean up our country and get rid of all of the litter. And that is, I'm not blaming no government, that is each and every one of our own personal responsibility to keep this country clean, Madam Speaker. So we are positioned short of our country deciding to shoot down fishing boats in the Caribbean. We are geographically positioned, and we have all of the infrastructure. And I'm not talking about physical infrastructure, I'm talking about the people infrastructure to be great, Madam Speaker. We're going to do great in terms of tourism. And Madam Speaker, when I look at the tourism numbers that is produced by the Stats Department, you know what I see month after month? Record numbers. And let me tell you something, Madam Speaker, those numbers are going to continue to grow. Record numbers, year over year, to the point where we were working on to ensure that this island does not have a 2-month close down or 6 weeks close down, that we'll have tourism year round. So if you couple that in the revenue that is being generated from the hospitality sector in the general services tax, which should be record levels of money trickling into the treasury every month from the general services tax from the hospitality sector, Madam Speaker. And if you couple that with the record levels of monies that are trickling into the treasury from that AI, it means, therefore, Madam Speaker, that the government of Anguilla can do more. And Madam Speaker, I say that to say this. In 2010, when the Anguilla Progressive Movement, AUM, came to office, Madam Speaker, there was no budget in place for 2010, but we had to collect monies, Madam Speaker. And at the end of 2010, the government of Anguilla collected 155 million EC dollars, Madam Speaker. 155 million EC dollars. Today, we are doubling that in that AI alone. Couple that with record levels of funds emanating from the hospitality plan into the treasury, it means that the budget that the Honorable Premier presented may not even be real because it contemplates a deficit of $73 million. It may be a surplus of $100 million. It could quite possibly be a surplus of $100 million. And that AI reached 1 million users some time ago. Identity Digital was able to do a tremendous job with that, Madam Speaker. The contract is not yet public, and I understand why the government of Anguilla has not made it public, just like I understand why the previous APM administration did not make it public. Now, Madam Speaker, I can see that by 2030, that AI bringing into the treasury of Anguilla at least $1 billion EC dollars, Madam Speaker. So think about this. That AI bringing in $1 billion EC dollars in 2030. But in 2010, government of Anguilla only brought in $155 million. So tell me, how is it? It's hypocritical to say that the government of Anguilla can do more. How, Madam Speaker? So what did the government of the opposition, led by the Honorable Leader of the Anguilla Progressive Movement, state that we should do? He said we should reduce the duties. He said we should cap the freight. We're here talking about that today. He said we should provide electricity credits. He said we should remove the USL, Universal Social Levy, which was the precursor to the ISL, the Interim Stabilization Levy of 3%. He said we should provide direct investment in Anguilla. And we even go further. Remove property tax from the businesses in Anguilla, except for the hospitality sector in terms of villas and hotels. That is not unreasonable, Madam Speaker. That is not unreasonable, given the fact that the government of Anguilla in 2026 is going to see more money, more revenue into that treasury than at any time in the history of Anguilla. And I foresee that it's going to be surpassed in 2027, and 2028, and 2029, and 2030. So the government of Anguilla indeed has a fiscal space to do so, because if you compare that to what Dr. Ellis Lorenzo Webster's administration did in terms of electricity credits. Every electricity credits, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, each one of them valued upwards of $6 million, Madam Speaker. So do the math. And how could it be hypocritical to do more when this administration of the Anguilla Progressive Movement brought to the people of Anguilla Senior Shield, where every person over the age of 70 don't have to pay any costs in terms of public sector costs for their medical care. Whatever it is, dentistry, elective, selective, surgery, diagnostics, whatever it is. And then went further with Junior Shield. And the plan was that eventually you'll have a national health insurance covering every single individual in this country, Madam Speaker. How is it hypocritical to say we couldn't do more when the Anguilla Progressive Movement decided that it was important that our pre-primary school teachers be paid more? And the government of Anguilla, under the leadership of Dr. Ellis Lorenzo Webster, provided the capital to ensure that they were paid more. But how did it happen? It didn't happen because of that AI, you know. It happened because of the GST. And we're here talking about, oh, the GST now allows for people to eat more at the restaurants and so forth, Madam Speaker. When every single restaurant in Anguilla have increased their menu costs significantly, Madam Speaker, every single one have increased their menu costs. Everyone. You're paying more. And when we talk about the business community, some of us in here are in business. I know my good colleague over there, Mr. Cardell Richardson, and we have been in business for some time. I know Kyle Hodge, he has been in business. And I would still like to eat some Caucasian goat, but we are in business, Madam Speaker. And I can tell you that the business costs have gone up since GST have gone. The business costs for the concrete companies have gone up since this GST relief that has been implemented, Madam Speaker. So don't tell me that it's a good thing, because here is it, Madam Speaker.
Data.
We're talking about data now. Jim Jones grocery store paid 13% on their services. Jim Jones paid 13% on his security costs. He paid 13% on his electricity costs. He paid 13% on his telecommunications costs and so forth, Madam Speaker. Jim Jones, now knowing that he's going to get this rebate, Jim Jones decides that he's not going to add that GST in his upfront costs, because no, it's not an operating cost. But today, Madam Speaker, under this new regime, the 13% on all of those services that grocery store have to use now are operating costs. And so the cost of food, the cost of goods and services have gone up. Show your invoices, show your receipts. They have gone up. So the people are asked to pay more, Madam Speaker. So you can't say it's hypocrisy to ask the people that the government of Anguilla should do more, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the member, single element member, spoke about Anglic and electricity and renewable energy. The chairman of the board of Anglic today is one Mr. David Carty. The chairman of the board of Anglic, when the Anguilla Progressive Movement was in office, at one point was David Carty. And David Carty held a town hall type meeting, style meeting, along with the CEO at the time, Mr. Sutcliffe Hodge. And David Carty told the people of Anguilla, at this present time, in order for Anglic to move forward with a loan from the Caribbean Development Bank, it must have the government of Anguilla's blessings on it, signature. Because what they are not telling you is that the position then and the position now are different, in that the government of Anguilla have reached a place based on the Framework for Fiscal Responsibility Act that they don't have to go to London like a little dog anymore. And hopefully this United Front administration will be the administration that takes us into political independence. I'll support that too. I don't care who takes us into independence as long as we get here. And Madam Speaker, that is the difference. It was the same single island white member, Mr. Joseph Vanderpool, who stood up in this house in November of 2025, and he said by December of 2025, the Caracas Bay building will be completed and operational for January 1st, 2026, in order to be their office building. He said that. He said it was important for that building to be bought in order to facilitate renewable energy integration. When I drive by the Caracas Bay building, when I go to buy my RNL water, Madam Speaker, the best water on the planet, shameless plug, Madam Speaker. When I go by there and I look to the left if I'm driving towards Stonegrong, if I look to the right if I'm driving towards Lakes Wall, I see a dugout shell, Madam Speaker. And we're in April of 2026, Madam Speaker. April of 2026. Madam Speaker, like I said, we are not here to oppose this bill. We are here to support this bill. But our position remains that the government of Anguilla can and should do more. When the vote comes to this House, you're going to hear a number of ayes. You won't hear any nays, Madam Speaker, because we all support this bill, and we believe it should be permanent. We believe it should be permanent. And to say that we don't know what's going to happen next week, when we have a president who is predictable, and to say that what the Premier of Anguilla says in a press conference when Trump says what he says on a Friday, the markets react. When he says what he says on a Monday, the markets react. The markets react when he's standing in front of the door of Air Force One and says something like, I'm going to take Cuba. We're negotiating with the new head of Iran, and we're going to have a ceasefire deal. The markets react. And then Iran comes out with some Lego cartoons and said, we don't know who Trump talking about. And the markets react again. The markets react based on what the leader of the country says, whether it's Trump or whether it's the Honorable Premier of Anguilla, Madam Speaker, because it was the Honorable Chief Minister in 2006, Mr. Osborne Burlington Fleming, who said to the people of Anguilla, go to the banks and borrow and build. We will facilitate those loans. And guess what? The people of Anguilla, from Island Harbor to West End, from Shoal Bay to the forest, went to the banks and borrowed and borrowed. And you know who was one of the directors of the National Bank of Anguilla, Madam Speaker? The now Honorable Cora Richardson Hart. But I digress. But they went to the banks, Madam Speaker, and they borrowed and built. And in 2007, Madam Speaker, the National Bank of Anguilla boasted that they had $1 billion in assets, Madam Speaker. And we are building a West branch. I said on a radio show, when that West branch started, I said, I'm building the bank for me. Because I live right next to the bank, and National Bank of Anguilla is my bank. I love that bank. You know, I could call up the bank on a Monday and have a loan by the Thursday. I loved it. It was a good time to be banking in Anguilla back in those days, Madam Speaker. So I too can say that I borrowed, I don't know how many times I borrowed from the National Bank of Anguilla. But it's a lot. Too numerous to mention, Madam Speaker. Thank God for the National Bank of Anguilla. And Madam Speaker, by 2009, the bank had basically collapsed. So much so that Osborne Fleming, Victor Banks, and Evan McNeil Rogers was in a press conference, and the United Front administration said to England, come for your country. Come for your country. Since you won't allow us to borrow to get out of this situation we're in now, come for your country. When we went down to the National Bank of Anguilla building, went upstairs, was the empty shell, not even the walls inside was plastered. Everything I looked pretty from the outside, inside was empty, like some people, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, in 2009, they created a company called ASIDCO, the Anguilla Social Security Investment Company Limited, Madam Speaker. And through that vehicle, they took $20 million to purchase a Cinnamon Reef property that had a valuation in the good times of 2.71. And that was to provide liquidity for the National Bank of Anguilla, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, things were falling apart quickly. And in June of 2009, the Anguilla United Front, through Executive Council, approved the Anguilla Fiscal Recovery Plan 2009 to 2011. And in that, they spoke about payroll tax, goods and services tax, accommodation tax increases, what do you call it again, property tax increases, resort residential asset. It went on. It went on. But Osborne Fleming said, the Anguilla United Front said, we will not be bringing any budget to the House. Whoever government comes in office in 2010 will have to bring their budget. Unprecedented. Unprecedented. Because it don't matter. In 2000, I believe that in 2000, and this is speculation, we talk a lot about speculation, that in 2029, that Anguilla United Front will bring a budget to the House, regardless of what the political consequences are in 2030, in terms of an election in 2030. I believe they will, because it was the only time that that happened, Madam Speaker. And guess why it didn't happen? Because the British government in the FCDO, the Foreign Colonial Office, said to the government of Angola in writing in October of 2009, listen, you don't have to bring in a budget. You don't have to put these taxes in place. I'm paraphrasing here. You could wait until after the elections to do these things to the people. And they agreed. But in January of 2010, another letter was sent. And this one addressed to the Minister of Finance, who was Victor Banks in the United Front administration, along the same lines. And also speaking of the fishing arrangements with St. Martin, that a member for West End, when he was campaigning in 2005, Mr. Cardigan Connor said when he gets in office, knowing the importance of the fishing industry to the fishermen in West End, he will walk out.
Honorable member, do you have any contributions in respect of the bill that's on the floor? If you do, I'd like you to get to those, please. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, what I'm saying is contributions because you said, and I
No,
quote,
no, if you have contributions in respect of the bill, now would be a good time to get to them. You've had more than 45 minutes. And I know what I said, but you can get to your contributions now. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I'm saying all that to get to my point in all of this.
I know
is-
45 minutes is way more than flexible to get to your point. You've made no contributions on the bill.
Madam Speaker, all of my contributions is relating to the bill. And I know you know what you said. When I spoke about what the member for Valley North said, you said...
The
to
member
give-
for Valley North was responding to your honorable leader who said that the government should go far enough and then made submissions on GST, and that member responded to those. You don't need to eat into your time to remind me. I have a very good memory. Could you please move on to your contributions on the bill, please?
Madam Speaker, I am contributing.
Thank you.
I am speaking to the bill. I am speaking to the bill, Madam Speaker, and we did not have any time limits that was established at the beginning of this debate. If we had time limits, then we'll be guided by those parameters,
And now
Madam Speaker. I'm speaking to the bill.
The lesson I've learned is that in the future, if there's anything that's consensual, there still will be time limits because I thought members would be more than reasonable. I have not been unreasonable to you. 45 minutes on something you're consenting to and not speaking to is far more than reasonable. But I will take your point and I will reinstitute time limits even for agreed motions because it's agreed.
Madam Speaker, I continue to present my presentation on this bill as planned.
How much time do you need to
Madam
complete
Speaker,
your
it doesn't
presentation?
matter how much time I need.
It actually does matter.
No, it
how
does
much-
not, because we do not have any time limit set.
Okay.
Show me the rule that stipulates that you can stop my debate without time limits that has been established by the House, Madam Speaker. I'll read.
You're waiting for me to respond to you? Because I'm not going to respond to you. How much time do you need to wrap up your submission?
Madam
Is the
Speaker.
question that I've asked. And if you don't need any more time, I can move on.
I-
How much time do you need to wrap up your submission, honorable member?
Another 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Okay. That concludes your presentation. Are
Madam
there-
Speaker, you do not have the
I
authority
think you're
to
being
decide.
facetious, member. I'm only asking
You
how much
asked the-
time because it's 6 o'clock and there are other members that have to speak. I've given you 45 minutes on an uncontested bill. I'm only asking you a straightforward question. How much more time do you need? You said 2 hours. I can't allow you to have 2 hours. So you're either being facetious or you need 2 hours. How much time do you need? You're not going to be allowed an hour. You're allowed 10 more minutes. You're allowed 10 more minutes. You're allowed 10 more minutes to wrap up. And if that's not enough, you can wrap up right now.
I hope the people of Angola is watching. They say to me the same things that they're seeing today, Madam Speaker. You did not establish time limits, and so I can speak to this bill. And one of the members, I believe was a member for Valley North, said that at some point in time, we'll have some sort of historical context of how we got here.
I invite,
And I'm
are there
saying-
any other contributions
Madam
to this
Speaker, that is
motion?
not-
I recognize the Honorable Single Island-wide District Member, Member Hodge.
But
Please
Madam
proceed
Speaker,
with your
that is illegal.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker. And I want to thank you for this opportunity to be in this house this late afternoon, to be able to give my contribution to what this side of the aisle, to what this side of the house has been doing for the people of Anguilla over the past 5 to 6 weeks. Madam Speaker, as we look at the world today, we recognize that things have shifted. Things have changed for the worse, Madam Speaker. And as any responsible government would do, we would pay attention to what's happening on the news. We'll pay attention to what's happening in the region, outside of the region, and even within Anguilla. And Madam Speaker, before I even begin, I want to place on record, and I've made the notes of all who we should give thanks to, because as the Honorable Joseph Antepool said, it was indeed a Herculean task to get to the House today. So I want to first and foremost thank the various ministries, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Economic Development, the permanent secretaries and all the technical folks who labored, who burned the midnight oil to ensure that first and foremost, we had the Executive Council approval. And I want to thank the AG and her team for putting together this bill that suspends and helps us to assist us in achieving the overall goal. And thank you, Madam Speaker, to you for coming back to this House sooner than expected. So I want to give thanks to the Cabinet, the legislative branch, the Premier, the people of Anguilla as well, who are concerned with what they're seeing, the business community, groups that we speak to on a regular basis, not regular enough, but groups that we speak to who has Anguilla at heart and who are economists, who are business people, the ordinary man, the ordinary woman. Madam Speaker, the effort to get to this point in which we are here today, Madam Speaker, it was a phenomenal effort, and we have to give Jack his jacket all the time. Madam Speaker, a few weeks ago, after realizing what's happening in this global environment, the geopolitics of the day, we would have decided that we're going to approach this in the first instance with 3 measures. And we would have gone ahead, Madam Speaker, and we would have implemented the first 2 measures. The first being the removal of all duties on the importation of fuel. We removed the importation duties on the cost of fuel coming into our ports. So, Madam Speaker, as it stands today, the price that is reflected at the pump, and this is important for the general public to understand, the price that is reflected today at the pump, and I would have gotten gas today, Madam Speaker, and I looked at the pump, the price at the pump per gallon, and it said $18.15. That price at the pump, Madam Speaker, does not reflect any government taxes whatsoever. Over the years, government would have received up to $4 EC in taxes on fuel importation. More recently, it was cut to at least $2 EC on fuel importation. So just to re-emphasize the point, Madam Speaker, government is not collecting no taxes on fuel at the port. And this measure, Madam Speaker, is being put in place for at least 3 months as we continue to monitor and assess the situation. And as my colleagues would have stated earlier, Madam Speaker, we emphasize that the 3-month period is for us to gather data. Madam Speaker, we recognize the importance of bringing these measures to the House. We recognize the importance of ensuring that we respond quick enough so that we can cushion the impact that otherwise the consuming public would be feeling today. Because when you really think about it, Madam Speaker, the average man and woman who are working hard, Madam Speaker, day in, day out, can you imagine that without proper notice, without proper warning, Madam Speaker, how fast things are happening today, their electricity bill will go up, their fuel at the pump will go up, their shipping costs would go up, the importation of food prices will go up, all at once. So recognizing, Madam Speaker, what is happening, we acted and we came back to this House sooner than we even had planned to, Madam Speaker. So this is really a good response that I can really talk about, Madam Speaker. The other measure, Madam Speaker, that we implemented is controlling the fuel surcharge at Anglic. And that is important, Madam Speaker, because Anglic runs on diesel. And the cost per barrel of oil we see is about $110 upward as we speak, Madam Speaker. So it is important, Madam Speaker, that we implement a measure such as this. And I want to read from Anglic's Facebook page, because there seems to be some kind of confusion, Madam Speaker, as it relates to how far this measure goes. Anglic would have posted 6 days ago, and I quote, "We take this opportunity to acknowledge the proposed support from the government of Anguilla. As outlined, this is a temporary measure designed to assist consumers in response to rising energy costs across two categories. The first category, Madam Speaker, the accommodation sector. Support will apply to amounts exceeding 65 cents per kilowatt hour. So government support will kick in once the fuel surcharge exceeds 65 cents. And we know today, Madam Speaker, that the fuel surcharge has risen to 88 cents per kilowatt hour. The second category, Madam Speaker, is the domestic accounts. And I wish that the member for Road North was still in the House, but maybe he is listening, because he is a little confused as to whether or not supermarkets are included in this relief package. So I hope he's listening. The second category, domestic accounts. This is defined by ANGLEC as all non-accommodation accounts. So the support measure that is being applied to all non-accommodation accounts is any increase of the fuel surcharge above 42 cents per kilowatt. So the domestic accounts includes households, local businesses, restaurants, supermarkets, hardwares, your barber shops, your salons, any business that is not categorized as accommodation. So I hope, Madam Speaker, that it is clear, because we don't want to hear next week, Monday, on the opposition program that we have done nothing for supermarkets. Madam Speaker, this measure is across the board. I keep hearing the comparison of the $500 credit that the former APM administration did from time to time. That $500 credit went to households only. The measures that we are taking today apply across the board. Businesses didn't benefit from $500 EC credit from ANGLEC during the last administration. But today, Madam Speaker, this administration is ensuring that the support that we are giving, it goes across the board. And Madam Speaker, the measure that we are doing today, and I got confused. I don't call names in this house, but I got confused when I saw a post being shared. Someone shared the House of Assembly live, this session right now, a supporter of the APM. And they were criticizing, Madam Speaker, that we aren't going far enough, that we should be removing the duties on freight and insurance. But they shared this live. And if they go back to the House of Assembly Facebook page, they would see that the other paper was posted prior. And what does the other paper stipulate? What does the other paper say? It says exactly what we're doing today. So how do you share a live criticizing the exact thing that we're doing? I don't know, Madam Speaker. Some people just love mischief. So, Madam Speaker, this bill, a bill for customs temporary modification of valuation of import duty act 2026. Pretty much, Madam Speaker, what this bill is doing is removing the duty from being charged on your freight costs and your insurance costs. So when importers purchase goods overseas, instead of paying duties on the cost of goods, then you add the freight to that cost of goods, then you add the insurance to that cost of goods, and then you pay your duties. You're only paying your duties on the cost of goods. And Madam Speaker, I've seen, since the announcement of this, I have seen people excited. I've seen importers sending direct messages to Panama, in America, in China, in saying to them, load up the containers, send them to Anguilla now. This is a fact. As I walked out of the supermarket yesterday, a young businessman came to me rushing, opened up his WhatsApp and showing me his messages to his suppliers. So it is very interesting, the kind of excitement, the kind of optimism, even during this chaotic period that this measure is causing. And it must have us as a government ponder. We must ponder, because maybe this is the breakthrough that businesses need. But it is left to be determined. It is left to be analyzed as we go forward over the next 3 months. So this will be a very interesting period as importers look to increase the volume. You know, and my only hope, Madam Speaker, that by increasing the volume of their goods, that they get a better rate. Because we know the cost of goods are also increasing. So we would hope that this time, this period, allows for a certain level of stockpiling, because we don't know when goods will run out. We don't know which country will try to stop the export of goods to protect their local people. This is the kind of times we are living in. So we have come to this house, Madam Speaker, with this measure, in addition to the other 2 measures that we've passed, that we've already implemented. And we ask, Madam Speaker, that as a people, that we price our goods responsibly. We ask as a people that we support our businesses more. This thing about jumping on a boat to support another economy, we have to look at the consequences of those actions. And it is something that all of us would do, including myself. But we have to look at how to stretch our dollar home more often. And it is my hope that the business community takes advantage of this period. Buy more, give better deals, and let us see how our local dollar could stimulate and keep this local economy moving forward. Madam Speaker, it is 6 o'clock. I was going to say a lot more, but the opposition is gone, because I wanted to welcome back to Anguilla the leader of opposition. But I hope that he's somewhere on the outside, so that when this house is finished, I can personally tell him welcome back to Anguilla. I wish I was an immigration officer, Madam Speaker, at this point in time. Because if I was an immigration officer when the leader of opposition came back to Anguilla, I would have asked him how long he's staying for. But I'm not an immigration officer, so I can't. But Madam Speaker, you know, we really should have been able to keep this one to the bill, you know. There's support from both sides. But then, you know, it took a turn for the worse, Madam Speaker. And this is what the people of Anguilla is tired, sick and tired of. We don't come to this house, Madam Speaker, to attack anybody. When you see us behave like this, it's because we have to defend our character. We have to defend our actions. It is always because the other side come ready to make mischief, come ready to make headlines, because in 2 or 3 days, the leader of opposition is gone again. So, Madam Speaker, I want to go back to the bill. I want to stay focused. I'm going to wrap up now, Madam Speaker. And I just want to say to the Premier, thank you for your hard work. And thank you to the team. Thank you to the acting Premier, Honorable Joseph Antapool. For a period, he did his part. And it must be comforting to the Premier to know that when she's out, she has a team that has her back, and a team that is always ready to step up in these kind of times. And I'm proud to be a part of this team that there's no egos, you know, everybody rolls up their sleeves and just get to work. Whether it's on a holiday, whether it's the weekend, we keep ourselves busy and we support each other. So, Madam Speaker, just want to thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As the member has acknowledged, I do want to place on record the opposition's position because I don't believe the public would have the benefit of it. Pursuant to Standing Order 88, the practice of Parliament, in all cases not provided for by the Constitution or in the rules, the practice and procedure of the House of Commons of the Parliament of Great Britain and Northern Ireland shall be followed so far as same as may be applicable to the Assembly. I read that because that is our standing orders that this House has adopted, and this House will recall that the honourable member for Rhodes South did question whether or not the Speaker was permitted to limit or curtail some of his submissions. I do want to read that rule into the record. Erskine May, paragraph 21.42. If any member strays from the question under discussion, the Speaker will intervene to remind that member to speak to the question. If a member persists in irrelevance or tedious repetition either of their own arguments or of the arguments used by other members in debate, Standing Order number 42 empowers the Speaker, after calling to the attention of the House to the members' conduct, to direct them to discontinue their speech. Similarly, Standing Order number 42A allows the occupant of the chair to direct a member who breaches the terms to resume their seat. If the member refuses to obey the direction of the chair, the Speaker, acting under Standing Order number 43, may either direct them to withdraw from the House for the remainder of the sitting or name them for disregarding the authority of the chair. I place on record that the Honourable Speaker member for Rhodes South commenced his presentation at 5:03, and at about 5:37, I did inquire if that member was intending to speak to the substance of the bill, to which the member indicated that there were no time limits and that the Speaker did not have authority to curtail his presentation. The Speaker then indicated to the member that there was authority to curtail the presentation insofar as it relates to relevance and other standing orders. The Speaker from Rhodes South then indicated that he required an additional 2 hours, which was disallowed because of the time that has been spent, and taking into consideration that this is a bill that has proceeded by consent by both sides of the House. The Speaker then indicated that he needed additional time to wrap up. It was put to him that he should have 10 minutes, to which he spoke over the speakership and continued in that vein. We then moved on to other speakers. The opposition, the honourable opposition members were not happy with the position taken, and at about 5:45 did leave the precincts of the House of Assembly. So this House will proceed in their absence unless they intend to return, which I'm not aware of. Does any other member wish to speak? I recognize the honourable member for West End.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, naturally, I stand to support this bill. And it's always interesting because I think in the House at times we see it as an opportunity to stray from the point, as if we agreed what's been said or what bill has been brought to the House, but we tend to use some airtime to, I suppose, try to confuse people or general public. And to me, it's a waste of time, Madam Speaker. I do believe it is. When the chaplain started his prayer, one of the words that resonated with me, he said about listening with compassion. And the fact is that that's exactly what this government has been about. And I think every government should listen to the people with compassion.
A number of persons have said, presentations have talked today about reacting to the circumstances, but I see the actions of this government being proactive ahead of time to make sure that you don't react to certain circumstances. And my colleague, the Honorable Kyle Hodge, and there's a reason why he's on this side of the House today, is because when persons were not, or the previous government were not listening to the compassion or listening to the people of Anguilla with compassion, he decided he wanted to be on a team that was listening with compassion. Also, Madam Speaker, I believe that in every situation there's an opportunity. And for a number of years, I think as Anguillians, we like to think that we work together, but yet very independently. And if you consider that over the years, a number of our merchants would actually import containers, and they were probably half full. They did not work together. We could marvel at the Chinese and say that they work well together. But maybe this is an opportunity for us as a people or businesses to work together. I must say something again, Madam Speaker, about the people of Anguilla. Not because you're not living in Anguilla does not make you non-Anguillian. So wherever you are, whether you're in Miami or whether you're in London or England, you are very much Anguillian. And for the persons who constantly have to talk about this office in England as if it's the worst thing that can happen, it's an investment in our people. But you know what? You cannot convince people, some people, against their will. And if it's their objective to try to muddy the waters, if this is the worst they can do to us as a government, I think we're doing pretty well, Madam Speaker. But Madam Speaker, again, I would have to say that my team have gone out of their way, and my team is not just the elected members, but the persons who've got Anguillans' interests at heart. And over the last week especially, a lot of work has been done to make sure that this bill comes to the House with haste. Because again, we are being proactive and not reactive to what is likely to happen in another few days. So, Madam Speaker, I don't intend to go on much longer than that. I think much has been said. But I am here to show support to the Premier, who's brought this bill to the House, to our team, to the AG's office, to the Deputy Governor, the PSs, all who put a hand in this to make sure that our people of Anguilla could see that we're not taking away from them to give them back crumbs, and that probably was the case with the GST, and they thought they were doing something good. But the fact is that we are giving people support ahead of time because we know that there's certain things that will happen beyond our control. But what we've got control of, we will make sure that's in the best interest of our people. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Are there any other contributions? I recognize Single Island Wide Electoral District Member Brian.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good afternoon to all. Madam Speaker, I'd like to start by thanking all the relevant stakeholders who rapidly action to ensure we got this bill to the House, and especially you, Madam Speaker, and your team for the suspension of the rules so that we are here today debating this bill. It's very unfortunate that we had to go through so many drama for something that's so positive for the people of Anguilla. But I stand in full support, full support of this bill titled Customs Temporary Modification Valuation of Import Duties Act 2026. And Madam Speaker, this is timely, practical, and very people-centered intervention to bring relief to our economy and, most importantly, to the end consumer, which are the people of Anguilla. This modification addresses a reality that none of us in here or anyone can ignore, which is the rising cost of living driven by the global instability. freight charges have surged, insurance are unpredictable, and the supply chains are volatile. And still under this current structure, we're still calculating the duties on freight insurance, which makes it very difficult for businesses when they are important. And I'm hoping that, as it has been mentioned by my other colleagues, that there, after the 3-month period, there will be a reassessment, a report will be given, and I'm hoping that we can adapt this measure to make it permanent or into the future, because this will bring a huge impact into import for businesses and the economy of Anguilla. Madam Speaker, this bill reflects a philosophy that all of us as leaders should uphold. And it's when economic pressure arises, people must come first. And I'll repeat, when economic pressure arises, people must come first. And this was made popular by a German, British-born, by the last name Schumacher, who argued that the economy should satisfy basic human needs and promote well-being, rather than focusing on maximizing gross domestic product, GDP. And, Madam Speaker, we cannot control the international shipping market. That's out of our hands. But what we can definitely control is how we apply taxes within our jurisdiction. And it's very sad that the member for Island Harbor is not here. He left the house because he mentioned something about it's time to do more in terms of relief. And that shocked me because it took me back to 2023, well, 2020, 2021 during COVID. And then it brought my thought into 2023 when GST was implemented. 2020, 2021, COVID. And then 2022 would have meant that we as a people were waking up from bed and realizing that COVID was no longer such a threat as it was in the prior years, which is 2020, 21. And then 2023 would have meant getting your feet wet, bills to pay, time to put yourself on a balance. And yet we were shocked and surprised by the GST. But yet the member came here today and said, it's time to do more in terms of relief. He had an opportunity as well to do the same, because in press conferences, he mentioned himself that GST was overperforming, which meant he had a factual opportunity to provide relief or to do more in terms of relief for the people of Anguilla, which he decided to neglect the needs of the people of Anguilla and move fast ahead to implement the GST. So it concerns me, or I probably don't comprehend the double morale behind these statements when he said it's time to do more in terms of relief. And then during his term, he had the perfect opportunity to show the people of Anguilla what relief meant to him and his team, which definitely did not happen. So, Madam Speaker, I'm not going to speak for long. I stand in full support of this bill because it's targeted, it's responsible, and once again, it's people-centered. And I'm sure this will create a huge positive impact for the people of Anguilla. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I recognize the Honorable Member for Valley South.
Madam Speaker, honorable members, I rise today in full support of the motion for temporary intervention to change the import tax base from CIF to FOB for initial 3-month period. Madam Speaker, this is not merely a fiscal adjustment. It is deliberate, people-centered, and responsive to the very real pressures that, that our citizens are facing during this global uncertainty. Madam Speaker, we are well aware of the present geopolitical crisis that is taking place and has put an immense strain on small island economies like ours. Rising global prices, particularly in fuel and essential goods, have had a direct and tangible impact on the people of Anguilla. Our families are feeling it. Businesses are feeling it. And as a government, we have a responsibility to act decisively. This is exactly what the Anguilla United Front government has done and continues to do under the guiding principle of putting people first. Madam Speaker, allow me to highlight the significant measures already undertaken, which a lot of my colleagues have already spoken to for the day. The government has removed all taxes from the importation of fuel, ensuring that the price at the pump for gasoline and diesel remains stable and manageable. And we are also looking at LPG. Additionally, the government has taken an extraordinary step to absorb this increase in fuel surcharge for electricity. The full increase of 46 cents per kilowatt for households and businesses and 23 cents per kilowatt for the accommodation sector. Madam Speaker, these actions are not small. They represent a direct financial commitment by the government to shield our people from rising global costs. They ensure that families can have their lights on, businesses can remain operational, and our tourism sector remains competitive. Madam Speaker, initially for a 3-month period, a clear demonstration that this government does not hesitate to act when the welfare of the people is at stake. This is what it means to put people first. Today, we take this commitment one step further. The proposal to temporarily shift the import tax base from CIF, cost, insurance, and freight, to FOB, free and board, is another strategic intervention to reduce the cost burden on our people. Madam Speaker, by taxing goods based on FOB rather than CIF, we are effectively removing freight and insurance costs from the tax calculation, thereby lowering the overall cost of imported goods. What does this mean in real time? It means lower prices on food and essential goods, reducing cost pressures on businesses, greater affordability for construction materials, and continued access to vehicles and other necessities. As Paul said, with responsibility for agriculture, I must emphasize that food security remains a top priority for me. This measure directly supports the objective by reducing the cost of imported food and agriculture inputs. This will help ensure that our people have consistent access to affordable nutrition. But it goes beyond food. Madam Speaker, this measure supports the aspiration of our people, especially our youth. It helps ensure that a young person in District 4 and Anguilla by extension can still dream of building a home. A family can still afford to purchase a vehicle, that small businesses can continue to grow. In essence, Madam Speaker, this intervention helps to preserve the spending power of the people of Anguilla, and particularly those whom we represent. I stand here not as someone who seeks the spotlight, but as someone deeply committed to the well-being of our people. I am passionate about ensuring that every Anguillan has the opportunity to live comfortably, to provide for their families, and to pursue their goals. And I'm very sure that everyone on this side of the aisles align with the same compassion for the people of Anguilla. Madam Speaker, this motion aligns perfectly with that commitment. It is practical, it is timely, and most importantly, it is compassionate. Madam Speaker, AUF government has demonstrated through action its purpose to put people first. It's not just a slogan. It's a governing principle, from stabilizing fuel prices to protecting electricity costs, and now to reducing the tax burden on imports. Each of these measures form a comprehensive response to safeguard the livelihoods of our people. I wholeheartedly support this motion and urge my honorable colleagues to do the same, which all have done. Let us continue to act in the best interest of the people of Anguilla, and let us continue to put people first. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I invite the mover to reply.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would like to express sincere thanks to a number of persons, and you have heard over the presentations that were made, the thanks that were previously given. The Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Finance, the Ms. Marissa Hardin-Hodge, and the Ministry of Finance team, the Honorable Kyle Hodge, and the Ministry of Economic Development, Mr. K.L. Connor and the Customs Department, the Attorney General's Chambers, the Governor's Office, Honorable Jose Vanterpool as acting Premier, who would have pushed forward this bill to allow it to be brought to the House today, my ministerial and elected colleagues. And Madam Speaker, I am filled with pride today because on every occasion that the members have acted, my colleagues, they have shown grit and determination in being able to push through on whatever it is that has been placed before them. And I have to admit that each one of them has been tested during the time that they acted as Premier. And so what it says is that we are a competent administration, a government filled with ministers, with elected members, all of whom can take charge and can lead Anguilla forward. And for that, I'm truly grateful, and I wish to express my thanks to each one of them. The Governor's Office and the Deputy Governor, the Governor, were very kind in allowing Executive Council to take place on Friday, which was Good Friday. And so while other persons were relaxing at home, the members, the Governor's Office, the team, the AG, would have been working assiduously to make sure that this bill was passed. And so, Madam Speaker, I also wish to thank the members of the opposition, because in spite of the theatrics that were displayed here today, each one of them stood up and said that they were in full support of this bill. And what this bill really is moving from cost insurance freight, as you have heard, to free on board for a period of 3 months. It is significant, it is timely, it is important that we progress this bill, and that is why we would have suspended the 3 sessions of the House of Assembly, Madam Speaker. That is why we are here today, as opposed to returning on the 14th of April. And in that regard, I wish to thank you, the Clerk of the House, and the staff of the House of Assembly for facilitating us during this shortened period of time as well. And so we look forward to, I certainly look forward to being here on the 14th of April when I will present my opening address for the new term. And so with that, Madam Speaker, I would bring to an end my response to this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. Honorable members, the question is put that the bill be read a second time. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it.
An act to provide for temporary modification of the valuation of imported goods for the purpose of assessing import duty at ad valorem rates and for related matters.
Honorable members, at this stage, the House will resolve itself into a committee of the whole. Would the members wish for a 5-minute break, or would you want to press on and move forward? The House will resolve itself now into a committee of the whole. Does the membership wish for a break or to continue? Continue? Okay, this House is now in committee.
Clauses 1 through 5.
I put the question, honorable members, that clauses 1 through 5 do stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Clauses 1 through 5 stands part of the bill.
The title and the enacting clause.
I put the question that the title and the enacting clause do stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The title and the enacting clause stands part of the bill. The committee has now concluded its consideration of this bill. We will resume our sitting, and I call upon the Honorable Premier to report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to report that the bill shortly entitled the Bill for Customs Temporary Modification of Valuation of Import Duty Act 2026 has passed through committee without amendment and is ready for its third reading.
A bill for customs temporary modification of valuation of import duty act 2026, third reading.
I call upon the Honorable Mover.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to move that the bill shortly entitled the Bill for Customs Temporary Modification of Valuation of Import Duty Act 2026 be read a third time and passed.
Seconder.
Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that a bill shortly entitled a Bill for the Customs Temporary Modification of Valuation of Import Duty Act 2026 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. I call upon the clerk.
A bill, an act to provide for a temporary modification of the valuation of imported goods for the purpose of assessing import duty at ad valorem rates and for related matters.
Honorable members, I declare that the bill has passed and shall be titled Customs Temporary Modification of Valuation of Import Duty Act 2026. Thank you for your time and your contributions today. We shall proceed with the order paper.
Private members' bills, none. Private bills, none. Other orders of the day.
Are there any other orders of the day? Hearing none, may I invite the mover to move for an adjournment of this House?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to move that this Honorable House be adjourned until the 14th of April, 2026 at 11 a.m.
10 a.m.? 11? 11, okay. It has a seconder?
I rise to second, Madam Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that this Honorable House stands adjourned until April 14th at 11 a.m. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. This House stands adjourned. Thank you, members.